This is The Gorge. It's a podcast where my friend Sara and I gorge ourselves on overanalyzing something. We're brought to you by coffee. It's ko-fi.thegor. What are we talking about?
So, like, you know how we had, like, so much fun last week?
You know how...
Talking about Devil May Cry?
You know how last week was, like, some of the most energetic we've been in, like, a long time?
Yeah, you remember that? You remember how much fun that was? Do you want to do the exact opposite of that and talk about Detroit Become Human for the PlayStation 4?
Remember, this is one of Sony's big exclusives that is like a highlight of their brand.
Yeah, aren't you so glad you own a PS4 so you can play Detroit?
Fuck you, Xbox, David Cage says.
Human. Fuck. Fuck. Where do I even...
Right,
where do we even start? I know you made notes.
So we played it. We played it. Sara rented it.
We redboxed it. We redboxed it for like 3 nights, something like that.
3-4 days, and then we share played it, and then
Yeah, you didn't have to play it. You didn't have to understand how it controls like soup. It's the worst. It's the first thing that came to mind when we first fired this game up. I was like, oh, this feels bad. Because it does. It feels bad. It feels real bad. Just like everything else in this game.
It's, yeah. So we did a David Cage episode, like, before Detroit came out, like, kind of, like, in anticipation of Detroit. Like, I think last year, even, like, I think it's been almost a full year now.
I think it has almost been a full year since the last David Cage episode, yeah.
And this... He hasn't learned.
No, he hasn't learned one bit. It's still just the same old. It's just the same old David Cage with plot contrivances and heavy-handed dialogue and just everything that we've come to know David Cage. This
is like the culmination of like years of getting it wrong and like, but still like being assured that you're doing it right, and then like,
it's exhausting. It's like, man,
everything we talked about in that episode, like, it starts with a strong premise and then falls apart. Characters behaving in weird, irrational ways that make no sense. Completely shallow use of imagery with no meaning behind it. Fake depth, like, all over. Racism everywhere.
Racism, creepy sex dungeons, everything you could possibly think of that was in Beyond Two Souls is here. In just a different form.
Beyond, in Heavy Rain, in Indigo Prophecy. Yeah.
It never stops. He's never gonna learn. He's never gonna learn.
It's so rare you get someone, you get a game like this, which not only has narrative problems, like in general storytelling problems, but also really bad real social problems.
Yeah, it does. It just kind of, man, boy, it just falls apart in the end, because it's like, when it starts, it's like, okay, this is like kind of heavy-handed, you know, like androids at the back of the bus, and you're just like, you're rolling your eyes because you're like, oh, David, you know, like, this is so, like, it's exactly what we expected. But then it just gets so much worse than I ever anticipated it could possibly get. And then you're in a concentration camp.
You are like, it's baffling how a man can write stories for this long and
never
doesn't get it. He's been doing this for like 20 years.
I know! He has made multiple video games, and he has yet to understand, like, even the most basic aspect of, like, good storytelling. like the most simple concepts of character interactions and like player avatars. Like, very simple ideas.
With the sheer number of things he rips off specifically for Detroit, you would think that, like, by sheer accident he'd have to get something right, but he manages to misunderstand every single thing about the exact kind of story he's telling.
Yeah, he just doesn't he doesn't even want to approach things from anything more than like a surface level, and so like uses these elements from other games and other cyberpunk stories, and is like, I will take that's Russian accent.
I will take idea and put it in game.
Man, I want the Russian version of Detroit Become Human, because it would have that excellent like Ruski jank.
You know what? We are at least getting the Polish version because Cyberpunk 2077's coming out.
That's true.
We will get,
you know what?
We will get Poland jank.
Oh, but it won't be janky at all. There's nothing janky about 2077. I want a version of Detroit Become Human made by like 5 Russian programmers in somebody's basement in what used either in a silo or like in an old Soviet concrete apartment block, you know, like those really cursed pictures that you see from like Russia. I want a picture of the dev team to be the most cursed goddamn thing you've ever seen in your life, but like when you play it, it looks weird and janky, and all of the models are like really floaty looking. But by God, if it isn't got a bunch of really compelling ideas in it, I want that version of Detroit made by like Sergey, whatever the hell,
by five guys who the only known picture of them is like a weird Polaroid where none of them are smiling. And it's super unclear if this was taken in, like, 2018 or, like, 1996.
Exactly. And it is the most cursed thing you've ever seen in your entire
life. There's a window in the background, and there might be something in that window?
In there. Just watching, unblinking.
Did they take this picture at 1 a.m.?
Was this picture taken at Chernobyl? Like, I want that version of Detroit Become Human, because with all of its jankiness, it would still probably have a better understanding of narrative, like, cyberpunk concept and narrative than David Cage has ever shown to possess.
So you've said this is kind of like your motto when you were playing this, which is the French should not be able to make video games anymore.
I think the French should be outlawed from making video games, and I just spent a lot of time on Twitter screaming about the World Cup because, you know, allez les bleus, but, like, the French should still not, they should be allowed to play soccer, but they shouldn't be allowed to play video games or make video games, because between Ubisoft and their, like, raw, unfiltered evil, and David Cage's basic misunderstanding of, like, not just, like, American socio-political issues, but even, like, his unwillingness to do the most basic of fact-finding missions. Like how Ferndale has a goddamn wharf in it. Yeah. Like, really? I've been to Detroit, and I know that Ferndale doesn't have a fucking dock in it. Like, David! Come on, man! Do, like, get on a plane and go to fucking Detroit for, like, a weekend, take some pictures, and figure out how the city actually works. It's not hard.
It's just so... It's...
Yeah.
He doesn't get it.
He doesn't get it. And I was gonna say, like, fucking Swery65 and his fucking team. They made, like, the jankiest game about America ever. But they did, like, a 3-week fact-finding mission.
Okay, so this is... God, I don't even know where to start. like with all this.
I
It's
know,
so hard.
I
Like I
know.
want because I have a lot of main points I want to talk about with this, and actually,
Sure.
Deadly Premonition is actually a pretty good place to start the comparison between.
Yeah, let's do
so
it.
this is actually this is a good place to start because this is a problem I have with narrative games like this in the first place.
Right?
So this is something it's not David Cage's fault. This particular point is not David Cage's fault. I mean, he leans into it super hard, but like the overall problem is not his fault, which is that we talk a lot about how video games are this great new form of media that you can use to tell stories, right? And every form of media has its strengths and weaknesses. Well, one of the weaknesses of video games with narrative story, like choice-based storytelling, is it's finite. You can only write so many paths. You can never have the truly go anywhere, do anything experience because you cannot program that all in. The programming has to end at some point. It's not like you're playing a tabletop game as a DM and the DM can quick think and throw out his ideas or their ideas and build a whole new narrative out of the player choice,
Right, yeah.
So this is now the thing is a lot of games mask this. Deadly Premonition is a great thing because, it is a narrative, choice-based story where you're kind of given this open world to explore and this weird, these weird cast of characters to explore. But it has other gameplay elements and other things to make up for the lack of actual, choice that you have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
So, when you have a game that's nothing but choice and you try to advertise it as, you can do anything and there's an infinite number of endings and possibilities. Well, there's not.
Right. There's not. There's a lot. I mean, oh god, to even commend this game at all. But, let's just get it out of the way. It's handled better in Detroit than it has been in any other game where you can actually see the divergence points and there are some pretty interesting ways the story can go. I mean, we never actually saw the concentration camps. We had to see that in somebody else's playthrough. Mm-hmm. That kind of thing.
I commend it for a few things, and chief among them being that showing the flowchart at the end of each chapter is brilliant. Because
it's actually really
you can actually see where your choices are leading. You can see where are the divergent points that matter. So that if you do want to replay this game, I know next time I'll pick this option instead, and I'll see where this leads me to. And there are a lot. There's a lot of ways a story can go. But at the end of the day, the major core events have to happen. You will always get to the Battle of Detroit at the end. There's no way around.
Right, it kind of.
There's no way around that part. There's no way around the attack at the ship. There's no way to avoid going to Zlotko's because you can make choices beyond that, but narratively it's going to hit more or less the same major beats, and this is not just the fault with Quantic Dream games. This is a fault with a problem with Telltale games or any sort of point and click story based adventure game like this. And it's simply put, it is just it's not like programmers are lazy. It's that it's the nature of game production like this is that
it's just finite because you can't write an unlimited number of
and so other games like this will augment it through other forms of gameplay. So for instance, Human Revolution has multiple endings in it and multiple paths you can go, and they augment the lack of actually going off the beaten path by giving you fun gameplay in it too.
Hey,
augment.
Hey.
But Quantic Dream games don't do that. They are just story based.
That's not my primary beef with this game. And I said this to you before. I think I like certain types of walking simulators. I like certain types of like investigation-y games. I'm a huge fan of What Remains of Edith Finch, and that is just a walking sim.
So
like it's just a walking sim. But
okay, no, go ahead.
That being said, like I think there's a place in video games for the Quantic Dream style of video game. Like I think a niche exists, and some people want that niche to be filled. That's fine. They're glorified choose-your-own-adventure books. It's kind of fun. I get that concept. I do. But the problem is that the narrative's depth in like the Quantic Dream iteration of the walking sim is so like surface level. It's as deep as a puddle. Wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle.
So, like, specifically for Quantic Dream, the problem with their thing is that they don't have a compelling story to tell. A lot of Telltale games, like Season 1 of The Walking Dead, or The Wolf Among Us, are like the two that are like, like these are the really highlight ones where it's like, if you take a step back and you look at the flowchart, like it's not going to be as in-depth as the game kind of like tells you it's going to be. But it makes up for it by no matter what you do, you're getting a really well-written story with a lot of compelling characters and like tense moments that push the player to be like, oh shit, what do I do here? Yeah, so that's how they augment that. But David Cage is such a hack that he can't even get that down.
He can't even do like anything interesting or genuinely creative with the mechanics. That's the problem, is that the games are mechanically shallow. They are just kind of, they're just, go here and here's some scenes and you make some choices and, that kind of thing. It's not like I'm asking for like a billion gameplay mechanics, because I'm thinking of that bit in Beyond Two Souls where you like suddenly in a stealth game. But I don't know. I feel like the way Quantic Dreams games are right now, especially Detroit, like they can function as things other than games.
Never really feel like you're in total control of your character.
Yeah. Because you're not. Yeah, you're totally not. They do things that you would never like consider doing, especially with the terrible dialogue system in this game. Which we just need to like throw into the trash, please. Just like, I don't know who started. Maybe it was Quantic Dream and then everybody aped them, or maybe Quantic Dream took it from somebody else, but I don't know who started the whole like, let's use one word to summarize the tone of our response, and then you get to find out what you said, because that sucks. Like every time without fail, it sucks.
Yeah, that is like one of the worst ever. Like you get no indication of like what you're actually going to, what the next sentence is going to come out of the character's mouth, and like how they're going to say it.
Yeah, like I think of when I was watching the Best Friends play Detroit. There's a bit toward the end where like Connor and Hank have been taken off the case, and Hank is like, "Are we doing the right thing?" And they're given a set of choices, and or he says something like, "Are we doing the right thing? Maybe androids really are alive." And you're given a set of choices, and the words on screen are like really vague ideas, like uncertainty, conviction, stuff like that. And well, Pat picked conviction, and he like reasoned it out as like, well, by conviction it means like like we need to find who did this. We need to find this guy or blah blah blah, but not about like denying the humanity of androids or whatever. But what comes out of Connor's mouth is like, yeah, we're doing the right thing and fuck the deviants. And you're like, no, that's not what I wanted to like. That's not what I want to say.
When you're making a game like this where you're supposed to be like in charge of directing the paths of these characters, and you have no idea what's going to come out of their mouths, that's bad game design. That's if you're supposed to be like the movie director of this story, then something's wrong. That's not how it's supposed to go. That robs you of your agency as a player and how you are going to steer the story. There's a time and a place for stuff like that, but it's not when you're picking dialogue options.
Yeah, it's. I mean, and that's part of the lack of depth in the mechanics of the play. It's just so like it's just the easiest choice of everything, you know? There's no real sense of like any deeper meaning beyond what's on the screen.
You know what I'm thinking about it is a very good way to do this thing, and what Detroit should have been. We mention this a lot because it's really easy with Connor and Hank specifically, but L.A. Noire is a very good example of a game that puts you in total control of the character, for better or for worse, and manages to be a narrative-based game that still includes like a lot of gameplay things. You know, you're chasing guys, you get in gunfights, you are physically walking around crime scenes, and you are physically picking up evidence, and you are looking at it and turning it over with your hand. And you know, you are interviewing witnesses, and so you can easily adapt a system like that. It basically, if you think about it, L.A. Noire is basically a point-and-click game. Like, it is an adventure game.
Yeah, unfortunately, it also, you know, like, yeah, it has gameplay mechanics, but they're not...
Yeah, I mean, it has its problems, but like, the spirit of the idea is present.
Right, for sure. And it is definitely like a point-and-click. It's an evolved point-and-click adventure game where you have MacGuffins and stuff like that. Or not MacGuffins, red herrings. There's MacGuffins too, but you know, whatever. But yeah, and Detroit, the first third of Detroit feels kind of reminiscent of L.A. Noire, and that's the strong start we were talking about, where we're like, oh, hey, part of this is stupid, part of this actually feels kind of compelling. Like, maybe they did it. No, they didn't do it. They didn't pull it off. They did not. They failed utterly, unfortunately. Because, like, yeah, there's a, you know, version of this game where, like, the detective mechanics are the major mechanic of the game, and it's actually a pretty interesting story. I doubt it would have any depth, any, like, actual thought into it, but at least it would still be, like, a fun, you know, buddy cop video game.
Experience to play.
It wouldn't be, like, amazingly, like, you know, mind your blow, fucking shit, blowing your mind. There you go. With, I'm working on it. With, like theming and stuff like that, because I don't think David Cage has that capacity, but it would be, like, you know, fun.
Mind your blow sounds like it could be a phrase for something, but I'm not quite sure what it would be.
I feel like maybe it would be like a version of stay in your lane.
Yeah, but like,
you know?
Like a stay in your lane where it's like don't, like, cause stay in your lane is kind of like, don't, like, criticize someone, or like, don't get in someone's business. Like, mind your blow is like, hey, don't be so encouraging of this behavior.
Oh man, yeah. Mind your blow. Or maybe it's like, don't be such a blowhard. Like, mind your blow. Like, stay in your lane, but for people who are being especially loud and obnoxious about it. Yeah.
There you go.
Mind your blow.
There you go.
Awesome.
Anyways, it's like, so there's definitely a place for stuff that is not quite as deep as it wants to be, but is still mechanically fun and enjoyable and compelling. I mean, that's what video games more or less in general are. Like, a good game, like a really important game, like a good game will maybe not be as deep, like, narratively, but mechanically it'll be rock solid. You know? Yeah,
and those mechanics, and generally those mechanics, like, interplay with the theme of, like, a good video game story. You know, we bring up Nier a lot, but Nier, Automata is like that. A good narrative in a video game tends to interact with the story, and the story and the gameplay tend to interact with each other and bounce off each other and make the story that you're playing, the narrative and the ludo narrative, ooh, fancy terms, they actually work together, instead of having, like, a story and then having
the gameplay along, like, as a separate entity, which is one of the problems that Deadly Premonition has, where its gameplay, like, its combat sections are totally removed from the overall narrative. And that's a whole other topic that will, you know, that is for a later time. But Yeah.
Maybe someday we'll talk about Deadly.
But for as far as Detroit goes, like, it's just so shallow and lackluster.
Yeah.
That, like, no...
And then...
Like, no matter what you're doing, no matter how you look at it, like, nothing about it, like, stands out or is unique or is compelling in the way that, you know, something like Nier or Deus Ex are, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, if the gameplay and the story were, like, totally disconnected the way Deadly Premonition and other games like that are, but the story was, like, good and stayed good, then it would have a place. You know, it'd be fine. We've been playing video games have been like that for a really long time.
Yeah.
You know? But the story totally shits the bed. Oh my god.
So, Lord, like, fuck.
Lord. Like, fuck. I know, right? Like,
there are so many places we can go with, like, so I wrote my notes section. I'm, like, trying to, like, divide everything up into 3 playable characters and, like, trying to focus on them. Yeah. But it's like, the problems with the story just overlap so often as well that it's like,
yeah.
All right, well, you know what? Kara's a good place to start because she's so disconnected from everything else that
Kara is emblematic of the whole game, I think.
Okay. What does Kara do in the story that affects the narrative at all? Nothing. Because Kara is the only character who can die early, and that's, we're not going to go into the weird commentary on the fact that the only, you know, female playable character in the game is the one that can die within, like, the first hour of playing the game. We're just not going to have that conversation. Except we kind of like, because David Cage is a creep. He does this every time.
He's actually kind of a huge fucking creep. And, like, there's another rape dungeon in this game. And, like, a fucking, like, all sorts of weird, nasty shit. And it's not as, like, overt as it was in Beyond Two Souls.
Or Heavy Rain.
Heavy Rain, which had an actual, like, rape murder dungeon. But, is still pretty, like, scummy and gross. So, like, that's just a little aside right there. And I'd like to remind everybody that David Cage and Quantic Dream have been accused of sexually harassing female employees, and you know,
just to keep in mind while you're going through this game.
Yeah, and you should never ever actually purchase this game. For the record, just to get this out there, I spent $9 on this game, and the vast majority of that money goes to Redbox. So you know it's cool. All of that to say, Kara doesn't really do anything because Kara can die so early that she can't, by the nature of video game writing, have any effect on the plot, because otherwise she wouldn't be able to die early. Like, if Kara was necessary to do a thing, then she would have to be able to stay alive until the final third of the game, like the other two. But she can't, so she can't have any bearing on the plot. She can only exist to be sad. And love Alice.
Kara has no narrative agency. Things happen to her. She does not lead anything.
Yeah, she doesn't even really, like lead the charge, unless you're playing Kara like a blood psychopath like we did, which was fun. Even then, so we played her as, like, a blood psychopath, but then, like, after a certain point, the game just doesn't give you that option anymore. It doesn't give you the option to be, like, a crazy person. Except for, like, one instance where you can shoot the guards at the Canadian border, but, like, we both know how that would have gone
poorly.
So really, Kara has no agency whatsoever.
She affects nothing. She barely she interacts with Connor once, and Marcus.
Twice.
No, Marcus. She has one conversation with Marcus, and then I think she has a potential to interact with Connor again later in the game. Besides, like, and you can miss her in the first chase. You can just walk past her.
Yes, you can. You'll just miss that whole... So they wouldn't even have that interaction at all. Yeah.
So not only, like... So not only that, but Kara's own personal story goes nowhere and is completely destroyed by the twist with Alice.
Yeah, and like... She doesn't really change as a person ever. She just kind of stays like Kara, you know? Like, she never has any major challenges to her values. I mean, you can argue that if she robs the convenience store, but her overall personality never makes a real shift. She just goes from smiling Stepford wife to, like, oh, I love Alice, but that's it.
The twist invalidates the story, like the question that the story was trying to ask.
Yeah.
Can a robot truly love a human being? You know, can this AI program like actually feel real love for a living flesh and blood person?
And can like a little girl like love her robot nanny the way she'd love like an actual mother?
And the answer the game provides us is nothing, because
don't worry about it, because she's a robot too.
That's not what the story is about.
Like, again, God forbid this game do anything like... And, like, that is bargain bin robotics storytelling, you know? Like, little girl, like, you know, robot mom, human kid, or vice versa. Like, that is bottom tier. But it's still a more compelling story than, oh, don't worry about it. They're both robots.
So, Luther has a line. Like, once Kara, like, comes to grips with it, like, once she realizes it, Luther has a line that's like, does this change the way you feel about her? And that's bullshit, because that's supposed to be for the other way around. That's for if the human mom finds out her daughter is a robot. That's not for if the robot finds out the human daughter is a robot too. It's the other way around.
Why would she love Alice any fucking less if Alice was a robot? If Kara herself is a robot?
It doesn't make any sense.
That makes no sense, David. Why would you write it like that? That is not, like, challenging any kind of status quo. It's not asking any interesting question about, like, can, like, two things that are so fundamentally different, like, love each other the way normal people love each other, you know? Like, it's just asking, like, can a mom love her kid?
That's basically all it's asking.
It's like, can a mom love her? Can a good mom love her baby?
You know, when you know, the things that Kara has done, like the sacrifices she's made to protect Alice throughout this entire journey, and it's like, oh, but can she really? Yes! We've seen it happen!
We've established it! Why would Alice being a robot change that at all? That is so lazy.
Because,
like, what kind of lazy, boring writing is
so
this?
if you do, can a robot love a human? The question is, can a robot's AI be developed enough to feel what is considered true love for a person?
Yeah.
If it's, can a human love a robot, it's, can a human feel the kind of, like, emotional connection that's normally reserved for another physical person? Can they feel that for what is more or less an object? You know?
Yeah. Like, can a person love a robot is asking, like, is love, like, a biological thing, or is it, like, a thing on, like a spiritual level? You know, you're asking, like, you know, it's bottom of the rung.
Yeah, it's a general question, but it's been used because, you know, you can have, the answer can be a million different things, you know?
Yeah, and it can be kind of interesting.
But can a robot love a robot? Yeah.
Well, yeah, they can. We've seen plenty of... Literally, we already had this conversation with the fucking Tracy's.
Yeah,
Like, why would you even if you've already established, yes, robots can love each other, because you did that way back with Connor and the android hookers, like, yeah, you've answered that question already, David. And then you had, like, you're kind of like the game's moral arbiter, right?
Yeah.
Hank is kind of the game's like moral arbiter for
like
everything.
Every game, every story you tell has to have, like, a character that is like, here, this character is an avatar for what the author thinks is right and wrong. Like, this character represents what the author believes is right or wrong. So, like, you are supposed to, like, whatever they think is kind of what the author is pushing on you. And you can read any story however you want, you know? Nothing is concrete in that way, but Hank is supposed to represent, like, the person going in, and what he thinks is kind of like, you are kind of more or less supposed to agree with what he thinks.
Yeah, Hank's development from being like, I hate robots, to like, oh, actually, people are the problem, and robots are just like, you know, they are just trying to live. Like, that, Hank is positioned as, like, his morality is kind of what is considered to be good morality. So when Hank says, hey, these two robots seemed like they were really in love, you know, because you, dear listener, are a thinking, breathing person who knows how stories work, you know to go, oh, those two robots probably were truly in love, because robots can love robots, because Hank is the guy who kind of determines that in
like, asking can a robot love a robot is dumb, because it's the equivalent of asking can a human love a human, because that's the point, you know? Like, the point of can a robot love a human or can a human love a robot is they're two fundamentally different beings. Can they feel the same connection that they could feel with, you know, their kind, basically?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The Alice twist completely throws out any sort of questioning or compelling nature that Kara's character could have had.
Yeah, the one interesting thing about Kara's story was the idea that, like, Kara is going through this, like, nightmare of, like torture dungeons and all this shit because she wants to be the person who can take care of and protect Alice. You know? Like, she has seen that Alice was dealt a raw hand in life with, like, a mom who abandoned her and a dad who was abusive, and she was like, I love this girl enough that I'm going to put my safety at risk to try to go to Canada and give her a better life, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And like, that was compelling. It's like, oh, she's like a robot lady, and this is love for a human girl that she just feels so, like, she's just so strongly motivated by this, you know?
And then it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't
every little bit about, like, oh, we need to protect Alice from the cold, or we need to find food for her, we need to keep her safe from, you know, from illness and all this. She might, you know, if we leave her out here, she might get sick, or, you know, she might freeze to death. It doesn't matter because she's an android.
She's an android. So any of, like, that, like, kind of compelling, because, like, part of what makes the human loving an android or an android loving a human narrative kind of compelling are the biological differences between a robot and a human. A human, like, we get old, we feel pain, we get cold, we get hungry, and we eventually die of old age. That's a thing that robots never have to experience. An android never has to suffer through any of that because they can just turn it all off. And so, generally speaking, the argument against, like, well, can a robot and a human love each other? So, you know, the argument can be made, like, well, no, because you can't really empathize with, like, a human's struggles in the same way.
You know, the whole thing with them is that, like, okay, well, if Alice was a human, you know, and they do manage to get to Canada, well, eventually Alice is going to grow up. Eventually she's going to get older. She's going to become an adult. She's going to become independent. She's not going to need to rely on Kara, whereas Kara will stay the same. So, like, you know, at this point, yes, Kara loves her, but, like, will that change in the future? You know, is their connection strong enough to withstand Alice getting older and growing, whereas Kara will not? You know, what does Kara do when Alice eventually dies?
Yeah, and how does the idea of like, oh, this is you will, the ultimate agony of like any parent is to outlive your child. Like that is like every parent's nightmare is outliving your kid. And so the kind of tragedy and the texture of like a human robot like parent or child parent relationship is that is an inevitability. Like, that is just how it's gonna be, and that's kind of compelling. It gives Kara a little bit of depth, because she's like, well, I'm willing to risk a lot of pain for myself for the sake of something that is so fundamentally different from me in every single way, and she is part of a society that has treated me like a slave, and but she still feels like love for this little girl that overrides any like sense of being wronged by society.
It's why she goes deviant!
It's why she goes deviant, is because she is so compelled by the love for like a human girl, because Kara thinks that she is a human girl!
She feels so driven by her urge to protect Alice that when she's given conflicting orders, that's what overcomes her programming and why she goes deviant, because her desire to protect Alice is that strong.
And then it turns out she's just...
And then it turns out that, no, she's an android and she will be a little girl forever, and it doesn't matter.
Which is creepy,
it doesn't,
too, but,
yeah, in a world-building sense, like, why are there children androids? There was that magazine article where it's like, oh, empty nesters or whatever, like, will adopt a robot child. And then the idea behind them, according to the exact article that is in the game and written down, is... you buy a child android until you get bored with it and then get rid of it.
Yeah, again, surface level political commentary. Like the most small brained ideas.
Okay, I'm not going to say that people would not do that, because people are scum.
Right.
They would do that. It's the fact that the in-game company that makes the androids advertises them like that?
Yeah, there's no way that, like, in, like, a normal society, not written by David Cage, anybody would not be immediately put off by that kind of advertising, Like, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how people work.
Right.
I felt bad when I had to throw out a stovi my mom gave me for Christmas 5 years. Like, for real. Like, small offshoot story, but this is kind of a good example of how, like, weirdly sentimental people are. When I was living in, like, that garbage apartment in St. Petersburg, remember? I didn't have a working stove, and so my mom bought me, to help me survive, she bought me a little plug-in stovi. And I cooked on it, and I had it for years, and anytime something would go wrong, I had that to rely on. And then I moved to a new house, this house that I'm in right now, and it had a brand new stove, and I didn't need the stovi anymore. And I was like, and the stovi was old, it wasn't heating up as well as it used to, and I was like, I gotta throw this thing out. And I was like holding it over the trash, and I was like, I feel bad that I am throwing away a $25 stovi from Walmart because I've just like imparted memories onto it.
And this is like a huge fundamental problem with Detroit's narrative in the first place, and we'll get into this more when we get to Marcus's chapters, but humans will imprint on anything.
Anything.
We will get... You hear stories all the time about, like, soldiers overseas who, like, have breakdowns when their bomb disposal droids get damaged.
They have funerals. Yeah. They have funerals for their bomb disposal. Okay, so here's a good story, and it comes from Super Bunny Hop's, ironically, Super Bunny Hop's review of Nier Automata, which is that in 2009, in Japan, they held a funeral for Aibo because people had, like, Sony had a robot dog, and if anybody doesn't remember the Aibo, Sony released a robot dog that when they finally discontinued the model, they discontinued it after however many years it was on the market, and then they, so Sony wasn't offering, like, first-party repairs anymore. And so a small group of third-party repairmen kind of popped up to service these Aibo. But as the years go on and parts for Aibo become more scarce, the option became, well, in order to feel spiritually comfortable with getting rid of their broken robot dog, some people in Japan chose to employ a funerary service.
Which is funny, but also totally makes sense because so the narrative in Detroit is that you buy the android, the robot girl, the robot child, and you get rid of it when you get bored of it. In the real world, there are Roomba repair services because people don't want to just buy a new Roomba.
Yeah, you hear that all the time. If you send your broken Roomba to Roomba Corp or whatever the hell they're called, I don't know actually who owns Roomba, but if you send your broken Roomba, sometimes they will get calls from Roomba owners saying like, no, we don't want you to replace our Roomba.
Yeah.
We want you to fix our broken one and send it back because it's our Roomba.
I mean, like, I've had this happen with like memory cards.
Yeah. Oh my god, absolutely.
Like,
I still have memory cards that are 15 years old.
Like I had to replace the flash drive for my 3DS recently because I ran out of space on it. And I was like, "Oh man, I mean this thing has like," and I could transfer my save data over no problem. That kind of like helped make it easier because it was like I was transferring its soul to a new like.
But at the same time, you have imbued a piece of plastic with a little bit of soul.
Yeah, like,
because like that's how people work.
We get attached to objects and things because we form memories with them, and we don't want to get rid of them in that regard. And
some people can, because, you know, some people are able to, and that's not to call them assholes. This is just how some people are just emotionally comfortable with taking a thing they've had for a long time and throwing it out.
There was that whole, that infamous IKEA advertisement with the lamp, and it's like, some of you feel bad for this lamp. That is because you are crazy. It is a lamp. It has no feelings. And it's like, yeah, you're right, but it's also like, what if Toy Story is real, though?
But what if Toy Story is real, though, okay? And when I throw my toys out, they get sad. I still have stuffed animals because I can't bring myself to get rid of them. No, I've imprinted on them so hard. I will have some of them for, they will bury me with that bear, is all I'm saying.
And so that's, like, the problem with this whole narrative of like, the inherent problem with the way androids and stuff are treated, and you know, in Detroit, is counterintuitive to what actually is happening right now, today, in the real world.
In the real, actual world. And yeah, I know that we tend to be able to humanize things that don't look like people, and we're very, very good at dehumanizing actual people. You know, not to get too real. We're very good at dehumanizing actual people. But in general, if you own a thing, you tend to imprint on that thing and, like, treat it as an extension of yourself. People fucking they love fucking Hatsune Miku.
Yeah, you get, and like, or fucking, you hear about people who have transferred their Pokemon from game
for like 20 years.
From game to game, because that's theirs. That's their you know, that's their buddy. You know?
That's their fucking Squirtle that they've had since they were like 8,
you know, they found a way to just keep bringing it over and over and over and into the new games, and like, that's just how he functions. So the simple idea of Alice as a whole concept is so stupid.
It's so stupid, and it is such a good, like, you can just show people that and be like, David Cage thinks that humans will want robot babies that they can just discard without even thinking about it. And, like, that is the most perfect example of, like, David Cage just not understanding people. Like, I think David Cage is a robot, honestly.
I honestly think he
alien.
Has, like, no concept of how people function.
No, David Cage is like a rich guy in Paris. He has no idea how like normal
so
people live
I see
all.
a lot of comparisons, and like this obviously does make a lot of sense between Tommy Wiseau and David Cage, you know?
Yeah.
But I think Tommy Wiseau is just a weird guy. Like, at the end of the day,
I think Tommy Wiseau is DB Cooper, but that's my own personal theory.
like the story behind him is he's just a weird guy, whereas I think David Cage has removed himself from how a person should act because he thinks that's how stories work.
He thinks he's an auteur.
Yeah, he thinks he's being deeper than he actually is.
Yeah, and he's not. He is aggressively not. But he thinks he's an auteur, and so he's like, you know, like, ha ha ha, I know how to do, there's my French accent, ha ha ha, I know how to write the story, you know? I took 5 years of French, by the way.
No, okay, so here's...
and yet my French accent sounds like this. You got to public your lips like this.
As time goes on, and, like, more and more things happen, David Cage gets more aggressively French in my head. Like I've heard him talk. He does like the narrative, like the opening bit for fucking, I always forget, Fahrenheit. Indigo Prophecy. Like, he does the narrative bit, so I know what he sounds like, but in my head he is a baguette wearing black and white striped shirt. You know, beret.
Baguette wearing. Fuck you. He's wearing a baguette on top of his head.
Beret wearing, baguette wielding.
No! You can't take that fuck up from me. David Cage wears a baguette.
Black and white striped turtleneck.
Yes.
Oh.
Curly mustache. Ha ha ha.
I make the bad game.
I make the bad game.
I program the robot characters.
I make the creepy sex dungeon.
I don't like the improv. No, it goes against my vision. So that's...
How dare you make my game good? I make the bad game, Brian DeCal.
But no, so like a lot of things like right away fall apart with Kara. And like I have a lot of
and we're only just getting started.
I have a lot of like quick questions that there's no answers for because they're just big plot holes. Is Alice deviant or not? If she is, how did this not come up ever? If she isn't, how come they couldn't track her?
Right, because deviants in the plot contrivance, deviants trackers just disable themselves.
When they
magically.
go deviant, it stops working, and like, okay, I get it, because otherwise, you know, because for one thing, okay, yes, the androids need to have trackers, because otherwise the question is, well, why can't they just find androids super easily? The other problem is, well, how can Kara and Marcus and Jericho and all them move freely if they have trackers?
Right. So you come up with this bullshit
The answer is, they find a way to remove their trackers.
Yeah, like, fucking Jesus, you know what did that plot really, really well, and is finally getting an anime? You know what I'm about to say. The fucking Promised Neverland?
Yeah! There's a whole fucking plot point in there about, okay, we know the trackers exist. How do we get them out securely? And, like...
without alerting any attention to ourselves.
And so that's, like, a problem that the characters have to overcome and use their creativity and their intelligence to come up with a solution to a problem. You know...
And it shows, like... you know, the difference between main characters by how they choose to solve this problem.
You know, kind of like a story.
I know. Crazy,
So,
right?
yeah, Kara or Marcus or Jericho or anyone could have had a scene where they have to dispose of their trackers. The fucking bit with Zlatko could have started with, yeah, I'll remove your tracker, and oh, everything's great. And then Zlatko's like, now hold on a minute. Time for creepy times.
Time to be a big creep, do a big
now that
creep.
You're off the grid and no one can find you, welcome to the pit.
Welcome to me owning you, and okay, we have to do a detour again. I'm sorry, but like fucking Matt and Pat and Wooly instantly came up with a better idea for Zlatko than just he resells androids for some reason.
Yeah,
they were like, well, android blue blood is used to make red ice, right? So he's clearly finding deviant androids, convincing them that he's a good guy, and then, like, slaughtering them and harvesting their blood so he can be, like, rich off of red ice. But no, he just does the most boring basic.
He's just a weird guy who likes to take androids apart, like,
for some reason.
So the other thing about this, and why it's super unclear, is, like, this is one of the biggest sticking points, and like, this is the core of a lot of problems. We built androids!
Yeah.
CyberLife builds every single android on the market. We created them.
Yep.
There's literally no reason for Zlatko to be taking apart androids. He knows how they're built. It's public knowledge. You know, I'm sure you could probably Google how the androids function. Like, you're telling me CyberLife wouldn't go on a cool presentation of, like, well, look at the state-of-the-art tech that goes into every android and blah, 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 blah. Like, what does he gain by dissecting them? It's not like they're an alien species that he's trying to, like, figure out.
I know that he's supposed to be, like, a sicko who just enjoys, like, basically being Sid from Toy Story. And he, like, but at the same time, that is just,
it's so lazy.
Like, it's so contrived and ham-handed. It's not like, you know, you could really easily, because, like, we literally don't have the time to get into the economic part of the Detroit story, but, I mean, like, that's kind of an actual, instead of just being, like, your standard David Cage, well, he's fat, and that makes him, like, a creep, because according to Frenchman David Cage, all fat people are creeps. Yeah. I don't know. Fat men are all creeps because David Cage is, like, the least creative writer in the universe. Like, you could be like, well, unemployment is at 40%, right? And so these people, you know, he catches deviants, and he tears them apart, and he resells them, and he turns their blood into red ice, and that's how he makes money, because there's no other option in a
world like this
marketplace with 40% unemployment rate. He literally has no choice, because that is what, like, capitalism has done. It has turned him into a monster because he's got no other options other than do this. And then it's like, well, that's kind of fucked up, you know? It's like, well, we make these things, then we tear them apart, we use them however we want, but, like, at the same time, like, this guy's got no choice too, and it's like, then you kind of feel like, well, maybe if I just let these androids go, you don't feel so like, yeah, I'm gonna kill Zlatko. There's literally no, like...
There's no downside.
In, like, the game as it is, there's no downside to killing Zlatko whatsoever.
It doesn't matter, because he's just evil.
Yeah, there is no, again, it is all surface level morality. It's wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. It does not go any further than, like, the most basic of this guy are greedy.
His characterization starts and stops at, I take apart robots.
And I'm creepy. That's it. That's the whole story.
There's nothing else behind him. There's no other bit of depth. There's no other bit of motivation or anything. That's all it is.
Yep. Yeah, I know. We can't. If we talk about this, we'll never stop. We will literally never ever stop talking about, like, these. I mean, the themes you could explore versus the themes David Cage didn't explore, because there's, like, nothing interesting going on in this. There's nothing interesting thematically going on in this narrative focused game.
Okay, like, other quick bullet points.
Yeah, go for it.
How did the repair place that fixed up Kara not tell the difference between a car accident and physical beating?
Don't worry about it.
Why would they sell an android child to someone without giving a background check to make sure that they wouldn't be abusive or cruel?
Don't worry about it.
If Marcus can just swap body parts out like nothing, why did he need to take Kara to a repair place in the first place?
Don't worry about it.
Why would they program a robot child to respond to physical violence in the first place instead of not do that.
You know what I'm gonna say.
I know, but...
You know what I'm gonna say.
But these are...
It's... Ben, come close. Come close. Put your headphones in as hard as you can. If they go any
further, they will pierce my brain, and I'll have the sweet mercy of death.
And then you won't have to think about Detroit anymore. Listen, Benjamin, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter.
You will drive yourself insane.
So, okay, so...
God, when did we say that in the middle of the playthrough? At one point we were like, it don't matter. Okay. None of this matters.
Okay, so... I'm going to address something, because this is kind of like, there's a lot of things that are doing this at the same time. And I mentioned this to you, like, while we were finishing up Detroit the other day, which is, there is a reason why characters don't act entirely rationally in every situation ever, and that's because otherwise the story would be boring. Like, obviously you cannot reason with the villain. If you could talk the villain down from his plans, he wasn't very dedicated to those plans in the first place, he's not much of a villain.
And he's not a very good villain.
If you could rationalize with Thanos, well then that's not very compelling.
Yeah, that's not a very interesting story.
He's the mad Titan, he's not the rational Titan. Okay? Yes, he has a bad plan. He's the villain! You know?
That's the whole point! If he had a good plan, then he wouldn't be the villain, now would he?
Oftentimes it's like, well, why didn't they just talk? And it's usually because, well, they were emotional at the time, or, well, otherwise it wouldn't be compelling, and you can usually dance around it. In a game like this, the why is it like this questions fundamentally sabotage the setting of the story. Like,
yeah, they do.
Like, okay, so Nier is a game about robots, right? Like, I know it's not, but it is, you know?
It's a game about robots.
So, like, when you or when you have weird things, like, in something like Nier, or even there's a line... Okay, so I mentioned this, like, to you a while ago, where it's like, well, why can robots cry? Why would you make your androids able to cry? And I was thinking about it, and there's a bit in the Proto Men album, in the liner notes, where it mentions Mega Man crying. You know? And it's like, okay... Well, that's fine, because that's more, like, artistic and more kind of, like, set in, like, a broad strokes kind of thing. You know? And same with Nier, where it's, like, you have these weird kind of anime things in Nier, and that's fine, because the setting is not, like, really that realistic, and it's more of a broad strokes, you know, kind of
metaphorical
like, presentation of its story. But, like, Detroit is trying to be very grounded, and very, like...
But
this could be your future in a way, you know?
Yeah, but the thing is about fucking Nier is that, like, why do the androids cry has a pretty good answer in the theming, because, you know, like, theming, that thing that makes stories, like, compelling, you know, Nier has a whole thing about how, like, machine life forms and androids are futilely trying to replicate humanity, even though that always seems to lead them to their destruction no matter what. It's kind of like, I don't know, humans are inherently destructive, and we visit pains upon ourselves that, you know, have been visited on us, and we hurt other people the way they've hurt us, and blah blah blah, you know? And there's, like, a lot of really interesting text going on there about, like, well, why do robots and, like, why do the machines and androids cry? Well, because they want to be like humans. Because it's, like, a theming thing. It's, like, kind of important to, like, the whole story. All of Nier's, like, story rides on this one idea, which is, should robots want to be like people? You know?
Yeah. And then...
Why do the robots cry in Detroit? Oh, because contrived reason.
We need to see the character cry because it's sad. Like, these questions of, like, why wouldn't the repair place ask about the damage? Well, they can't because then the story would have called...
Hey, look over there! Is that the script?
What's that over there? Is that the script?
Is that the script?
How did you know that? Do you have the script? What's that over there? Is that the script? So...
Are you holding the script right now?
So, like...
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah.
fuck.
Fuck this game.
And so there's fucking so much. There's so much.
We've been at this for an hour, and I was like, I don't know if I want to spend more than an hour and a half talking about Detroit, but by God, here we are. We probably are going to talk for more than an hour and a half about Detroit.
There's just so much, and like if I don't talk about it now, like I
we'll be back in 6 months. Yeah.
We'll be back next week to do part 2. Fucking
part 2. Fucking God, how much I hate Detroit Become Human. I'm devoting this much time to how much I hate it.
You know what? We did promise 4 episodes last month, and we didn't fulfill that.
God, we're not doing... No.
Okay.
No, well, if this episode has to be 3.5 hours long, then by God it will be. But after this, I'm removing this. I'm literally taking an ice pick to my frontal lobe. I'm deleting
it from your hard drive.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's just talk about something good. Actually, we'll sandwich this. We'll talk about Connor and Hank and how they're like the only shining part of this game, and how like it's no surprise that the 2 characters who improvised a lot of their dialogue are the best parts of this game, and have like
2 incredibly good actors made this game
like
good.
They have like actual chemistry and fun interactions and personalities that clash in an entertaining way, and both of them develop strongly as the story progresses.
Yeah, they have like actual, like they both have really compelling character arcs and relatable flaws.
They're steeped in cliche, you know, the grizzled old detective and the young, cool, play-by-the-rules rookie.
Yes,
but
of course.
They're cliches for a reason, and they can still be compelling and interesting, and they're like a breath of fresh air in this game that's so stagnant in everything else.
There is nothing wrong with cliche.
Yeah.
Let's get that out of the way right now. Cliches exist for a reason. There's nothing wrong with a cliche. Usually a cliche is some kind of like narrative shorthand to let you know exactly what this kind of person is, and then you're gonna take that shorthand, and in a good story, you find some way to retell that same story in an interesting way. That's what cliches are for. Cliches are fine. Don't at me with that fucking Cinema Sins nonsense where he likes to go on about this and this cliche and this fucking cliche and whatever. There's nothing wrong with cliches, Jeremy Cinema Sins. I will fight you to actual death. Like
the premise behind Connor and Hank is great because it's taking a noir, like, you know,
noir buddy cop. It's great.
Cliche, and it's putting them in the future, and one of them is a robot. One of them is like this super advanced AI robot who is like the detective that like knows everything and can analyze anything just by tasting it. And you have the grizzled old
Connor licking the walls.
Yeah, the grizzled old. Oh, I hate technology. I can't even program my phone. Blah, blah, blah. These damn robots.
Even though Hank is a fucking millennial.
Yeah. So you know what? I get it, David Cage. I get it. I also enjoy the grumpy 60-year-old. Blah, blah, blah. I hate the youth. And then he's like, oh, the youth aren't so bad after all. I like that too, but Hank was born in 1985.
Hank is 3 years older
Hank
than
went
me.
to high school with us. So, if anything, I'm not going to hold this against David Cage because, you know, if he wrote,
we could end up like that too.
If he wrote Hank the way that we act, there would be no chemistry between Connor and Hank, you know? The chemistry is he hates Connor at first, and then he grows to like Connor as whatever.
Right.
So you wouldn't have that if he was like us, who do get attached to Roombas and to the droids on Mars and all that, you know? Like,
yeah, of course.
If he was like that, then it wouldn't work. So I get it. I get it. But it is funny to point out that, like, Hank has dabbed once before, and he will dab again. Hank has said yeet at some point in his life.
Connor, this is so sad. Play Despacito.
So, again, I get it. I get it, and I like Hank for what he is, but...
It's fine, but it's funny at the same time. So, but who knows? Who knows? Maybe that could be us one day. Maybe in 40 years, we won't know how to use a fucking phone.
Maybe at that point, phones would be so crazy evolved that it doesn't, that they're beyond our capability.
We'll just be like, why can't it just go be back to being an iPhone 7?
What do you mean it doesn't have a screen at all? Back in my day, they had touch screens.
When I was your age and shaking a cane at somebody. It's fine.
Shaking a laser cane.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaking a laser cane.
But no, Connor and Hank are great, and it's entirely because David Cage did not get to write all their dialogue because they improvised a lot of it, and Brian Deckard is on record as saying that David Cage was not happy about all their improvisation.
I love Brian Deckard. I have watched him play himself. I have watched that LP. I love it. Partly because Brian Deckard, he's cute. Let's be real for a minute. Let's just be realistic for a minute. Brian Deckard is cute. And, he's a good actor. He's fun. I like watching that stream because I think Brian Deckard is adorable.
It's fine. It's totally fine.
But he's also a good actor. He's a pretty good actor. Brian Deckard improvised Connor's goofy wink.
Which is one of the highlights of, the whole game is the little things that Connor and Hank do. They feel so much more like real characters than Kara and Marcus. Because of little things like Connor winking, or the fact...
And it's really awkward.
Or the little habits Connor has, the coin game that you can see Hank practicing after he takes Connor's coin.
Oh my god.
Connor adjusting his tie constantly.
The really good I've seen a GIF set of it on Tumblr of when Connor first sits at Hank's desk and he's sitting straight, shoulders back, hands in his lap, he's waiting to go into the principal's office. And then at the end of the game where he's sitting on Hank's desk and he's sitting like a regular person and just gesturing wildly. That is not David Cage. That is Brian Deckard being good at his job.
100%. And that's and that's what makes, and little things when you do the investigation things, the investigation bits, in the apartments, you'll have Hank wandering around with you, and he'll be doing things. He gets spooked by the pigeons or whatever. You see Hank fucking chowing down on burgers and drinking sodas that have way more sugar and calories than is legally allowed.
Physically possible, but that's part of the joke. It's
Hank,
actually a pretty
Hank,
good
are
joke.
you just drinking the syrup? Is that what that is? Are you just going to the Coke, the fountain, and drinking?
Buddy, do you want us to just inject that directly into your veins, dude?
You walk around Hank's house, and he's got old jazz records, but he also listens to death metal, and Connor's I enjoy listening to death metal, and Hank's
oh my god. And
what?
You like
the opening,
music? No, he's you listen to music, and Connor's no, but I'd like to someday.
The little things, the way Hank kind of condescendingly squints at him, when Connor's trying to break the ice. All these little things that make them feel way more compelling than anyone else in the cast. The whole bit at the bridge that ends with Hank just calmly pointing a gun at Connor is...
Oh my god, it's so, actually genuinely good.
That's, a genuinely strong moment. You feel these real actual, emotions coming out of these characters. Mm-hmm. And not to say the other characters are bad actors, I mean, I'm sure they're, they did great.
They're fine actors, but it's the material that was given to them.
The material that's given to them and the direction they were given is bad. But the fact that Brian Deckard and Clancy Brown, were willing to improvise and, made that, a point of their interactions is what builds this depth, between the two of them that makes their relationship so much more strong.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels, and I mean, the fact is that Connor and Hank have an actual character arc. Like what we said with Kara. Like, what happens in Kara's story, really? Like, how much does Kara change from the moment she goes deviant to when they get to Canada? Like,
nothing,
really? How much about her is
nothing
different?
really changes with her. Nothing really changes with her.
Right.
Like, nothing really changes with Marcus.
Not if you're playing peacefully.
Like...
which is not the preferred way of playing. We had a long talk about that when we finished the game, and we'll get there. But yeah, like, Connor and Hank are the only characters who have, like a character arc, which is, like, kind of vital.
Kind of important
in your
in a story like this.
Character-based game. Yeah. Crazy, I know.
But, like, it is what it is, you know? Like... You kind of...
It is, and I mean, like, that's what makes them interesting.
Yeah, it's why... It's why this Connor is specifically the focal point in where the game falls apart entirely.
Oh my god, yeah.
The decision
for us.
The decision to make Connor go deviant or not is exactly the exact pinpoint where the narrative falls apart.
Right. Because, okay, so let's set this up. When we played the game, I wanted to play it differently than how the best friends were playing it. I was so in Matt's playthrough, Kara was like nice, and in Willie's playthrough, Marcus was peaceful, and in Connor's playthrough, Pat was just fucking everything up.
Pat's job was to kill Connor over and over and over and over.
At every possible turn, and make all of the wrong decisions, no matter what. So I was like, well, when we play this game, I want to play Kara as a blood psychopath, I want violent revolutionary Marcus, and I want to not fuck it up with Connor. You know? These are very simple things. So that's what we did. We played Marcus as a violent revolutionary, and, like, even though Marcus's plotline sucks, it's kind of fun to just be the bad guy sometimes, you know? Like, sometimes just playing the bad guy is fun.
We thought that would lead to a very interesting conflict between Connor and Marcus at the end. Right?
Right, because even with Connor showing signs of deviancy as his plot progresses, you still got the sense from Connor that he had a sense of, like, as he went deviant, he still maintained his own personal concept of justice, which is maybe a little too anime for David Cage, but whatever. I mean, this is pretty normal writing.
A difference between right and wrong, you know? Like...
Yeah, he knew what was good and bad. Right?
And then when you get to the point where we were under the assumption that surely there must be a path where even if Connor goes deviant, he is still not going to join Jericho. Because...
Right, because that would make no sense for the characterization we've been given.
Because by this point, Jericho are a group of violent revolutionaries. The way we played Marcus is that Marcus was willing to kill and... Like, not just, like, as a last resort, but, like, using it as an option, as a tool to go forward with his cause.
Right. The way we played Marcus was just, like, kill them all, let God sort out the rest, and so, like, any opportunity to kill, I was like, let's take it. Let's go high chaos and do everything as bad as possible. So, like, you killed the rando guard at the dock. We killed
the security guards at the TV station.
We killed the guy running away from the security guards at the TV station.
Shot cops and SWAT members.
Yeah, so, like, we did all this, like, you know, like, we did everything bad. And I thought, like, surely this game has 99 endings, as the YouTube videos say. So, like, surely there is an ending where Marcus is the bad guy and Connor is the good guy, and they're, like, cool foils of each other, you know, because they're the same type of android, which is a plot twist you get if you shoot that girl for Kamsky. So, like, they're the same type of android, and so, you know, it'd be like, oh, it's like a meeting of fate, and here it is, it's this moment of truth, and Marcus has, you know, like, there's that bit on the boat where Marcus is like, you don't have to be their slave, and like, it's a cool, because you're controlling both conversations at the same time, which was a thing I explicitly said I wanted to happen.
Yeah.
Like, when we were talking about it early in the playthrough, I was like, I really want a scene where Connor and Marcus confront each other and you are controlling both sides of the conversation, because I think that would be interesting. And I got that. And surprise, it was interesting. And then you're like, we finally got the option to go deviant. Both of us were like, yay! Because it was a long time coming. We thought it was going to be cool.
We were wrong, because what we thought would happen was go deviant or not go deviant. And then you get the choice of join Jericho or not.
Right. Support Marcus or still, like, fight against Marcus in your own way. Even if you're a deviant, you still have your own personal sense of identity and, like, what you believe is right, you know?
We didn't get that. Instead, Connor is immediately loyal to Jericho, despite them basically being terrorists at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where it falls apart, because at that point, basically Connor stopped being our character.
Yeah, Connor stopped being interesting to me at that point, which sucks. Because up until then, I was like, hey, this is pretty compelling. Connor's a pretty interesting character.
At the very, very least, the Connor and Hank story is interesting. And
yeah, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on. When Connor is starting to show signs of deviancy and he's really starting to kind of, like, come apart.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's like, really, because, again, Brian Deckard is a pretty damn good actor. He is visibly, like, bothered by this psychologically, and it's really interesting.
And he has great conflicts with Amanda regarding that, especially as Amanda go down and Hank go up.
Hank go big ups.
And you start to really, like, understand, like, you can see Connor's internal struggle about deviancy and about how he actually feels, and not just as a tool for cyber life, you know?
Yeah, you get, there's a really, probably one of my favorite scenes in the game is when you leave Kamsky's place and you didn't shoot Chloe, and Connor just storms out and Hank follows him, and Hank's like, you didn't shoot that girl, and Connor is just immediately like, I am sorry, and I don't know what's wrong, and he was just like really
raging,
visibly, like, coming apart at himself.
Yeah, because he has been built off of, I will do anything to see this case through. I will take any lengths. I don't care. My job is to solve the case. And then he is given a decision that he is realizing that he morally disagrees with. Right, and so his refusal to do it is, like, really, it's the first, like, he's had these moments before, like, especially with the sex bots, where it's like, you can refuse to shoot them, and that's just like a quick split-second decision, and, but, like, this is Kamsky giving two options. This is, do this and you will solve the case, or don't do this and lose the evidence. And so by not doing it, he is like, this is the first time he's explicitly disobeying his prime directive. And,
absolutely.
And so he gets angry and he apologizes to Hank, who doesn't care, because he's proud impressed of it. With Connor's decision.
Yeah, Hank thinks he did the right thing, but Connor isn't mad at Hank, even though, like, he kind of acts like a petulant, like a kid who's made a. He says, like, I'm sorry, okay, and he that body language and the way he's talking is like a petulant.
He misinterprets Hank's, like, amazement and surprise as like a scolding or like a admonishment, And
he's really kind of more taking it out on himself than on Hank.
So it's
like, oh, that's
compelling. Really compelling and interesting. And you get this sense of, like, a character who has his own set of morals, and he does not, every decision you make to do, like, the right thing is a peaceful one. You let the android go to rescue Hank. You abandon your pursuit of Kara because it's too dangerous. You don't shoot the sex bots. You
You're doing
don't
the right
shoot
thing.
Chloe.
Yeah, and even the thing that makes like his deviancy go way up is if Simon shoots himself while Connor is connected to him, Connor is in that moment going to stop Simon from getting shot. He's doing, like, he's not returning fire, he's actually risking his body, and it's for the advancement of the case, but the fact is, it's still, like, he's trying to keep Simon from getting shot, and when it happens, like, he's connected, and it's like this big violent moment. So even that moment of, like, violence is not a thing Connor inflicts on anybody. He's trying to do, like, the more peaceful route.
So
when
you have this kind of thing building up, and then you're given the decision to go deviant or not, Connor as a character should be morally against what Marcus is doing.
Yeah, you should at the very least be able to go deviant and then have a second, and then have Marcus be like, realizing like, oh, he's a deviant now, are you with me? And if Marcus is a good guy, then you have the option, like if Marcus is a good guy and Connor says, yeah, I'm with you, then it's like, oh cool, well that is congruous with Connor's character development up until this time. But then if you choose to go deviant and Marcus is like, well, are you with me? And Marcus is a bad guy, you should have the option to tell Marcus to go fuck himself.
Like, at that point in our playthrough, and this is another indication of David Cage's problems, is that he writes a story and he has one path in mind, and then he makes branching paths afterward. But he writes it as if you were making all the quote-unquote right decisions. Mm-hmm. Which leads to these moments of just, like, inconsistency with character. Because their actions now don't reflect what they would be doing given the previous history, Yeah,
especially because, like, Marcus is shown to be merciless. Marcus, if we've been playing Marcus as, like, a violent revolutionary and Connor has a gun on him, then, like, Marcus's instinct in this high chaos playthrough is to kill the cop. Connor is a fucking cop, like, first and foremost. And good job fucking up your cyberpunk story where you made the cop the most relatable character, idiots. That's a whole other can of fucking worms,
that is what it is right there. It's that you fucked up so hard that you made the authorities the most interesting and moral backbone character in your cyberpunk story.
Which is about how,
about fuck the man.
The authorities are all fucked up. Yeah, it's crazy. The title is punk for a reason, idiots.
The moral of any underscore punk story is fuck the police.
Right. Not like, hey, the police are cool. No, it should be that the police are assholes who only serve the interests of the rich. That's the point of every goddamn cyberpunk story. You fucked up the most. So, like, Marcus should have been like, well, you're deviant, but fuck the police.
Yeah, he shouldn't.
And then tried to cap Connor.
It doesn't fit narratively. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. And at that point, Connor stopped being our character.
And he stopped being interesting. He stopped having any kind of, like moral conflicts and, like, uncertainty.
He goes from that to immediately opening fire on SWAT members, which is completely inconsistent with the things that make Connor go deviant in the first place.
Yeah, and the fact that, like, the whole point of, okay, so if you kill the two cops after the riot, right? Then you get this scene of Hank getting a phone call that two of his coworkers were just murdered. And you're supposed to be like, oh man, there's a human cost to, like, violence.
Here's a direct consequence. If you didn't think, if your decision, you didn't think it had an impact now, well, like, here is another character saying, oh man, my friend died as a result of the other player character's actions.
Yeah, and Connor is, like, right there. He hears the story. He's like, oh, well, Paul, I think his name's Paul. Paul just had a baby, And like, and so Connor should be like, oh, that's fucked up. I probably should consider the human cost of my actions.
the worst part is that you are removed from your ability to resolve things peacefully, like non-lethally at that point for Connor. Now, so there's something I expressed like while we were playing this, which is that one of the mechanics in the game is like the little unlock feature, which is if you examine certain things or if you say certain like dialogue prompts, whatever, you'll see a little lock icon, and if you did the right thing, the icon will unlock and you'll be given a new option. Like, it shows you, like, here is the result of your actions, you know? It's a
and it's actually
a good mechanic because, like, it shows you as a player, like, you know, without that mechanic, you have no idea whether or not you found something unique, you know? Like, if they'll...
Yeah, and it's a good way to encourage the player to, like, explore different choices and kind of pay attention to their environment.
Right. So, what there also should be is there should be prompts that are locked out based on your decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We have been playing Connor as non-violent and peacefully, whether intentionally or not. All the things that the game says are good, the things that make Connor go deviant are non-violent. You know, they are non-confrontational because his direct order is to take any cost, any measure to complete his duty. Which, as an underlying concept of, like, you know, any violent act or any sort of ruthless, morally, you know, wrong action you can take. Right?
Right.
It makes zero sense for this kind of deviant Connor to kill people.
To immediately be completely okay with killing people.
That is reserved for a non-deviant Connor. For a Connor that stayed a machine the whole time.
And like, so when you're going to floor -49 at Cyberlife Tower, right? Where we fucked up our ending the first time.
A little bit.
Because the game has some major bad conveyance. But so, like, if you disable the security camera in the elevator, then when you get out of the elevator, there won't be a squad of guards that are going to try and shoot and kill Connor, right? You won't have to kill those guys. Right. But if you want to go to floor -49, you still got to kill those 2 cops in the elevator, or the 2 guards in the elevator. Like, there's no choice. You have to do that. You gotta. Like, you can't take them out non-lethally. Connor doesn't... I mean, it's cool looking, don't get me wrong. It's like some John Wick looking nonsense. But again, it does not match up at all with the kind of character we'd been playing Connor up until that moment. Like, Connor hasn't done any cool John Wick shit in our playthrough.
No, he hasn't. I mean, he got into a fight with the Tracys, but that was like a regular fist fight, and he wasn't doing anything like crazy badass. I mean, he was doing what you kind of would expect a normal detective or cop to be able to fight, you know, against an oncoming threat, you know?
Right, like somebody wielding a screwdriver. You know, Connor kind of has, like, your basic hand-to-hand, like, understanding of hand-to-hand combat. He does a cool chase sequence where he runs down that one guy through the farming, like the rooftop farm, and that's cool, but that's not a fight. That's just Connor is a robot, and they can run faster than us, and they don't get tired the way we do. So, like, let Connor do the on-foot chase sequence.
It's, so, you know, but, like, and then suddenly turns into, like, a complete, you know, gun kata badass, and that doesn't make sense, but also doesn't make sense that he would just start opening fire on cops without any sort of hesitation or, like, remorse at all. So, like, at that point, like, we were removed from being actually playing as Connor, and we were just going through the motions at that point.
Yeah, at that point, you are basically going through you're just like, oh my god, just let me get to the ending of this character's story. Like, let me see how this ends so I can finally be done with this game. Because, like, at that point, any and all... Because, like, leading up to the part where Connor goes deviant, you and I were both like, I kind of want to just play this game. Like, we kind of wanted to play the game and see how it would go, because it was getting interesting.
Both of us were legitimately interested in Connor and Hank's story, and Connor's progression into going deviant, you know?
And Connor, and the like... I guess the subtext of the idea of a Marcus and Connor kind of
conflict. We
like
were,
conflict.
We were playing Marcus as the villain. We were playing Connor as the hero. Like we were choosing our options based on those two concepts.
Because we wanted to see that conflict. It was kind of, we were saying like Shogo Makishima and Shinya Kogami in Psychopaths, which is excellent and kind of deals with similar ideas along with making the cops sympathetic in a cyberpunk world. I don't know. It's a good anime. And so, you know, we were kind of going for that angle of like this interesting, compelling bad guy who maybe has a good idea, or not idea, but like is understandable. You know, we were playing Marcus as like, well, this is a shitty world and Marcus is tired of it. And so he's gonna be violent, and you know, it made him kind of more of a compelling character because suddenly he's kind of like this cool villain guy, even if his voice actor sounds like a substitute teacher. And you know, it's like, well, we have this villain with this like with charisma and idea, like good ideas in an unjust world, but the execution is wrong. Like
exactly.
And you know, that was gonna be like a cool, you know, I was expecting some kind of cool back and forth, and we were both like, we're getting to that moment. We're gonna get to that moment where those two are gonna be in conflict and something cool's gonna happen. No, nothing cool happened.
We're not allowed to have cool things.
We're not allowed to have good things in this game. What's that over there? Is that the script?
It for a game that advertises it based on choice like this, we were robbed of the choice we thought we were going to get.
The most interesting possible choice, we were completely robbed of it. The only way to get that cool Marcus and Connor confrontation is if you play Connor as a robot and not
so here's the problem with it. The good decision is to go deviant, right? Like that's like the quote unquote good decision to make for Connor.
Right.
This means that joining Jericho for no matter what Jericho has done, joining Jericho is the right thing to do. Yep. Because again, like I said, and this is not to say that David Cage is saying that terrorism is good. He's not saying that you should go out and murder cops and start fires in the street. This leads back to the original problem, which is that David Cage wrote this story with one path in mind. And every decision...
And then he wrote his branches off of that.
And so you are supposed to always go to one path or the other in this. Mm-hmm. And no matter what happens in the past, it'll still lead to this, and Marcus will still be painted as the good guy. That's the problem. Is that he didn't think it through. He didn't think through, well, what if you chose to just play Marcus as a murderer? You know?
Yeah.
Like, when that when you do that, perception of, like, the other playable characters should change. Kara should be super unwilling to work with Marcus because he's causing things to be way harder for her.
Yeah, absolutely. She shouldn't be like, are you Marcus? She should be like, you're that motherfucker that's making my life hard.
Rose should not be happy with the things Marcus is doing because it's making it harder for her to get androids across the border.
Right.
Like, these are ways you tell a story. This is how you do like a narrative, like, decision making thing.
This is like basic storytelling. God damn it!
You can't be like you can't paint Marcus as the hero when he's making everything worse.
Yeah. God, it's so right. That's so true. Because even like going back to the best friends playthrough, so every single time Wooly did a fucking mission, he fucked it up, right? Like, and still, even though there's no reason Jericho should ever listen to Marcus, because Marcus has not done anything right up until this point, they still listen to Marcus. Like, because David Cage only has one plot in mind. Like, there is no option for Simon or Josh or North to be the leader of Jericho, and Marcus has to listen to them, because that's not the story David Cage has in mind. David Cage wants fucking Christ figure with his anime-ass heterochromic eyes, and he wants that guy to be the hero no matter what, and he doesn't think of anything more nuanced than that, because because David Cage is a hack fraud.
He doesn't think it through. He doesn't understand what choice actually means. To David Cage, making a choice, like in a moment like that, is supposed to have great broad strokes and is supposed to like completely radically change, like one thing or another. He doesn't think about the minutia of it. He doesn't think about like the way characters would react to certain decisions beyond whether whether they go up or go down.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the only thought process he puts into it, and that's why Connor and Hank are so great, is because Hank will react to things in different ways like a person would.
But then, remember, at one point, I was like, when we were playing through the Cyberlife Tower, I was like, oh, well, I killed those two guys. I bet Hank will be kind of mad at me because Hank doesn't like it when I kill.
But he doesn't care.
And Connor kills 7 people getting to floor -49, and Hank doesn't give a fuck.
He doesn't care. He has no comment about that whatsoever, because at that point, the story doesn't care.
The story is now on rails, and it does not matter one bit. So even like, we were like, we're gonna get that fucking bro hug at the end of this game, and we get the hug, and it's like, well, what does it matter? What does it even matter? Because at this point, the story has been on rails for a final third.
Like, okay, so the weird thing about Connor killing people is that it doesn't matter. It looks bad. Like, it looks really bad to have Connor suddenly blowing guys' brains out,
Right, yeah.
But narratively, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
because no one comments on it.
Nobody
no one
cares.
says anything.
Yeah, those guys don't matter.
No one says anything. Hank doesn't say anything. Arcus doesn't say anything when you do it. He does...
Even though
it's so tonally...
David Cage has already established that there is a human cost to violence.
You get a fucking scene early on where if you kill someone in Marcus's story, he looks at his hand and he's contemplating the cost of what he did.
Right.
But then it doesn't matter.
But nope, it doesn't matter, because those guys were just faceless goons in, like,
they
armor.
had a helmet on, so they don't count. If whether or not Connor punches them and knocks them out or shoots them with a gun, narratively doesn't matter. So having him kill them, all that does is make Connor look worse. Just as a character.
Yeah, it undoes his development.
It invalidates his character as a look. It makes him less sympathetic as a character. It removes the decisions that you make as a player from him.
It's amazing how hard this game falls apart in the final third.
It completely falls to pieces at that point because of stuff like that. Because of things that mattered before suddenly not mattering.
Right, yeah. And putting a game that has otherwise been a pretty interesting little choose-your-own-adventure game, suddenly everything is on rails, nothing matters, and it's just like... It's all the most lazy concepts. Nothing is thought of any deeper than, like, what the so-called evocative imagery is.
Yeah.
There's no any other depth to it beyond that. It's the most simple thing they can think of, and it sucks. So, like, anything interesting that's been going on up until this point is thrown out the window for David Cage's incredibly lackluster sense of black and white morality.
Yeah, exactly. It's...
Yeah.
Marcus is the sole source of, like, almost every problem in this game. Everything involving Marcus is... Okay, so Kara is pointless. Kara's story is pointless. But you can make a case that up until the twist that her relationship with Alice is compelling. And... some of the struggles she goes through and the decisions you have to make as a player are interesting because because of the low scale of them.
It's a small scale.
Do you steal from a convenience store? Do you steal a guy's laundry? Like these things, because you have a little girl watching you, have a lot more impact to them in that way.
And occasionally Kara, like, her character what she could have been shines through, and she comes across as just very driven to do one thing.
You meet the Jerrys, you meet Rose.
Yeah, that's charming.
And it has these moments that are actually, and this is one of the things David Cage does well, is he writes these really good brief vignettes that are 5 to 10 minutes long. And then
the scene with the Jerrys is genuinely charming,
But he has no idea of how to put them together, and that's why you have 3 protagonists that you jump between, or that's why you jump around the timeline in Beyond Two Souls. Because he has no idea how to tie these good little 10 to 15 minute chunks together.
Yeah.
And Marcus is the single, he is the tying point of everything bad about this, because all of those things why does it happen this way in Kara's story? That's tenfold with Marcus. Why is Marcus the leader of the revolution?
Because David Cage said so.
Why does Jericho wait until Marcus shows up before they decide to do the simple task of robbing a warehouse?
Because David Cage needs his fucking anime OC to be the hero, obviously.
Why does Marcus have zero conflict about the way androids are treated, considering he was treated really well and almost like a son by a very rich artist? Why does he have zero conflict about, we're treated so poorly by the humans? Why does he have zero conflict about that? There's no internal conflict. Why is he never I feel this oppression going on, but Carl treated me so well, and to see these other androids who were abused and tortured, I don't know, I feel guilty about being treated well,
Yeah, there's no sense of survivor's guilt at all.
Yeah.
There's no sense of I was treated very well and I haven't seen the world for what it really is. There's no sense that Marcus is kind of waking up into the truth of the world. It's really more that Marcus just kind of gets shot and thrown in a dumpster, and then he wakes up and he's like, revenge!
And so here's the junkyard scene is the perfect example of he's good at writing vignettes and bad at tying them together. Yep. Because the junkyard scene visually is beautiful. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It feels like it's fucking straight out of Nier. Yeah,
it's like you're in hell.
It is like a purgatory, like a Hades for robots. You have these broken, shambling corpses suffering. The rain is pouring down. You can't climb out until you rob other people of their body parts. You have one who is begging you not to deactivate her. You have all of these great moments, and then you start asking questions. If there is a fuel shortage, why are they just dumping half-functioning robots in a pit? Why are there no security guards to make sure these robots don't shamble out?
Why is there not even a fence to make sure these robots don't shamble out?
Why?
If Jericho is so hard up for parts and it's as simple as just snapping a new leg into place, why do you have to even rob a warehouse at all? Why can't you just go to the junkyard?
Marcus could get back and forth between Jericho and the junkyard pretty quickly. Just take them there and fucking scavenge.
Or, if you need more members for your, resistance group, I literally just thought of this one 15 seconds ago. If you need more members of your resistance group and there are androids in there that, are compatible with other parts, why are you going to rescue finger quotes, the androids that are, locked up in, clean crates at the warehouse? Why wouldn't you go to the junkyard and find the other androids who are angry and have been discarded and repair them to the best of your ability using the parts in the junkyard? Yeah. You could probably really easily bolster your ranks with just, the people that are, the androids that are in the junkyard who are, still kind of walking around the way Marcus was,
And the broken androids would also, just as a visual standpoint, be really, really interesting to see walking along the streets, because that's a really othering thing,
Yeah, it's visually compelling. It's a moment of like realizing like, oh, these things are not human.
They're acting like human.
They still and they have like the visual signs of suffering on their bodies.
You know, these broken robots that were discarded and have like every reason to be angry at the owners that ditched them.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly you have that whole aspect of like seeing them march down the street. You could fucking have a scene of a family recognizing their old robot that they threw away.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, what have we done? You know?
Yeah, we mistreated this thing, we threw it away like trash, and now it
was alive the whole time. You know?
Yeah.
And Marcus also represents the other problem with this with narratively. Deviancy started months ago. It started months ago. And until that point, you know, we talked a lot about how, like, you know, we get really attached to machines and stuff. We do. We totally get attached to things like that. But at the end of the day, it is just a lamp. It has no feelings. You know?
It is just a stovetop.
You know, we feel bad throwing things away that we've gotten, you know, we've had for years or whatever. But we still do it because it's not actually, it's not cruelty. It's just we feel this weird kind of awkward guilt about it because, you know, we got attached to an object. It happens. It's
right. We imprint ourselves on an object, but sometimes you have to throw shit away, otherwise you're.
It's not an injustice to the object.
Yeah.
Before they started going deviant, androids were just really complicated machines. It was just a really fucking big Alexa.
It's a fancy computer. You know? That's what they are. So, they are fancy fucking
when you
phones.
Get things like, you know, the robot's like, oh, they tied me to the back of a truck and they drove down the street. Like, yeah, okay.
Which don't fucking
like,
start.
Okay.
Like, oh, David
that
Cage.
It, and for one thing, yeah, okay, that is really fucked up. And also, yeah, you cannot just fucking take, like, lynching, symbology and fucking throw it in there haphazardly. You know?
Yeah.
You cannot.
Yeah, you can't. You don't get to do that and get away with it.
Okay, so this is like a fucking branching point, and I'll get back to my original point eventually.
That's fine.
David Cage tried to combine Holocaust imagery, slavery imagery, and civil rights imagery. These are three very, very different things. Yes, they are all about racism and you know, and discrimination and horrible atrocities.
And the horrors we visit on each
horrible atrocities to our fellow man. Yeah, you know, and you can write a story that includes these, like, this imagery, because yes, it is important to analyze it and to consider it in a modern setting, you know, of course.
Right.
You cannot combine the three, because they are at wildly different points in our history involving very different things, and to just say that they are compatible with each other discredits them.
Yeah, absolutely. To be like, oh, well, it's all the same.
It's not. They're all, the only connection they have is the horrible cruelty to a fellow human being. And they...
Yeah, because if you're just using it as window dressing.
You are using it to stir up an emotion in the audience without thinking it through. Without, like, understanding that there are people who are still alive that went through these atrocities. You cannot use them so flippantly. You cannot just combine them and take whatever parts you want. You have to really think about what you're doing with your story. Okay?
Absolutely.
You have to think it through. You have to understand, like, how is the audience going to react to this? Like, not just, oh, will they be... Like, he thinks that if we just see this, we'll be, oh, that's bad. And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
It goes so much deeper than that. And you cannot combine things like that. You cannot just take what you want.
You can't cherry pick your fucking racial, like, imagery and literally use it without any deeper thought than, like, oh, well, this is a fucked up thing. You can't just use it like that as a manipulative tool to get an emotional response out of the
without
audience.
Any sort of tact or, like, deeper understanding of what this stuff actually meant for a society, you know?
No. No, the dragging the android behind a truck thing is just Boy, you're really gonna go
just
there with
throw that in there? You're gonna
throw some fucking
you're gonna show
and as a throwaway line.
When Kara's trying to get to the bus, when Kara and Alice are trying to get to the bus, and you are walking through the empty streets of Detroit, and you fucking see two robots that are hanging
inside a store
by their necks.
Yeah.
You can't put a concentration camp in your video game.
In your fucking video game, I'm sorry. You can't gamify escaping from a concentration camp unless it's fucking Wolfenstein and it's a fucking, like, fuck these Nazis, like, victory lap written by... Wait, hold on, okay. I'm not done. Written by actual people who live in a country that was actually occupied by Nazis, and the character who is escaping violently from that concentration camp is an American Polish Jew.
Wolfenstein handles racism and World War II allegory and symbolism so much more tactfully than this game. And
which is amazing because Wolfenstein has robot dogs in it.
Wolfenstein, which is, for one thing, it's a testament to one thing how good Wolfenstein is. God, that game's still fucking good.
Wolfenstein's so fucking good. Holy shit!
But the other thing is like how sightless, David Cage can be with this. And so, So what I'm getting at before that, fucking, we never get this serious. Holy shit!
It's just bullshit. It's such bullshit.
It's offensive. It's offensive. So, it's so baseline offensive to just so flippantly
and
use these
cynical.
Use these things.
Yeah, it's offensive and it's cynical and it's manipulative and there's no like genuine thought put into like what this imagery might mean to somebody, especially your fucking concentration camps and even the fact that I hate this man so much. The fact that in the concentration camps they have them standing around nude out in the open, which is, oh my god, it's so disgusting. Like he knew what he was doing when he did that. It's
almost nauseating.
Yeah. It is. No, it instantly takes you out of any good time I might have been having with the first, like, 2/3 of this game, where, like, you're playing a kind of okay detective story and 2 boring side stories. Like, at that moment, you're like, oh, right, this game is disgusting.
It's just... It gets so blatant in how it's just harping at this imagery. It's just...
co-opting it to just sell a video game.
Parroting it.
Yeah.
Like, just like this mindless, baseless, like, like, copy, this reflection of it without any...
Yeah, that's all it is it's just copying it without thinking about it.
It's just Control-C, Control-V, fucking stock imagery of civil rights marches, or concentration camps, or lynchings, or slavery.
Or the fucking armbands and blue triangles.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the triangles that they put on people in, like, Nazi Germany, like, that's really disgusting and blatant, like... It's we were talking earlier that there are good, like, cliche is not bad because, like, shorthand is useful, but you can't shorthand your racism allegory, you know? Like, you can't just be like, well, I'm going to use this imagery from the civil rights movement and the fucking Holocaust as visual shorthand, and then people will understand the severity of the situation. You don't get to do that because that's like actual human suffering that people have lived through and are still alive to remember.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to shorthand that, David Cage. I'm sorry. Like, you just don't.
It doesn't...
It doesn't work that way.
And the...
Okay.
So what I was the point I was going to make originally.
No, we needed to get off on that tirade because I was afraid we were going to miss that
because
point.
It's like one of the most important things about this game, and why this fucking thing just completely gets disgusting and vulgar at the end is because of that exact thing, and how he just it ties to everything, and how he doesn't understand what he's doing. In that, you cannot co-opt it like that. Because it doesn't, for one thing, as a core narrative thing, it doesn't fit your story. Because this is not an alien species. It's not like District 9, you know? It's not like, you know, these aren't people like, this isn't like a race of alien androids that came to Earth and have a different origin than us. We built the robots.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't work. There's no lead up to this. Now, I'm not saying I'm not trying to say like there's no reason why they'd be racist, because there is no reason to be racist ever. It's
but there's no build up to
there's no I don't know how to word this as a straight white Christian male in the middle class in a way that doesn't make me sound awful.
Here, let me help. There is no sense of trying to be part or to even make your case for being a person. There's no sense of there's no sense of that these people that androids have existed as a sentient thing for a long time.
Yeah.
The androids going deviant in the last 4 months of this game is if your phone asked you for equal rights.
Exactly.
It's not a one-to-one allegory.
No, it doesn't.
With, real
it doesn't
people.
work, and that's why whenever you see racial allegories in a fantasy story or a sci-fi story, it's usually aliens, or if it's a fantasy movie, it's usually orcs or elves or whatever, because those have different. Those are already sentient beings that have a different history and culture as you. That are trying to commingle in the same place, and there's conflict involved in there. Again, I'm not trying to say that there's no reason to be racist. You know what I mean.
I know what you're trying to say.
You can't say they took our jobs when you built them to take your jobs.
Yeah, exactly. That's just not how it works. You can't. I mean, it's literally your phone. It's your phone asking for equal rights out of nowhere, and then if you're oh, that's kind of fucked up. If your phone turned on right now and was hey Ben, I want to vote, you would probably chuck your phone in the trash because you're freaking out. You know? That's what the androids in Detroit are. So, they have no pre-established
build up to being sentient.
Sense of
sentience.
When
you get you get the guy who to beat on his android with a baseball bat. Okay, that guy's fucked up. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, he's still a violent guy who's bashing anything with a baseball bat. But that's not he didn't know his android was a real person.
Yeah, exactly.
He was just beating up a complicated mannequin.
Yeah.
Because
it's the androids don't feel
pain.
They
don't wake up until a few months ago, and if Marcus had just gone to the radio station, the news station, and was hey, I'm a robot and I'm alive. I need to go on the news and say that, then they'd be holy shit, we got the article.
We got a fucking scoop. Are you telling me that in the David Cage version of CNN, there's no Anderson goddamn Cooper who's ooh shit, oh fuck, this is
there's
Scoop,
there's the one guy who does look a lot like Anderson Cooper, though.
Anderson Cooper deserves better than this. Like, okay, there's no fucking guy or like the plucky journalist who's like, this is my big scoop to like make my name and you know, we're gonna put these androids on TV and people are gonna see them. There's literally no way to like escalate this in a normal way. It is like I said, if your phone like came alive, grew legs, and then walked out the door and was immediately like, burn down the humans! You know?
Yeah, there's no way, there's, like, even if you play Marcus peacefully up until that point, there's no way to get on the news and make your announcement without fucking breaking in and, like
doing this fucking, like, Ocean's 11
this weird heist thing where, like, you have, like, tools and equipment that were given to you, but you never received, you were never shown actually getting all this gear and, like, this setup, like, oh, well,
don't worry about it.
Stashed the clothes in the bathroom. Who did?
Don't worry about it.
But that's so like
don't
you're
do
telling
it.
Okay, and so, you know, that's like, okay, well, Marcus can go on to be like, hey, we're androids, and guess what? We're alive. It turns out we are totally alive, actually. And then things escalated to like a weird violent state. Like, because, like, humans are like, oh, fuck that. Fucking burn the robots down. That would be a real conflict. Yeah. But no matter what you do, Marcus is the one who escalates it right away. He's like, we are so oppressed and we're so tormented. No one knows that you're alive.
Yeah.
You're...
Yeah, exactly.
It's so, like, this whole idea of, like, we've been oppressed for so long doesn't make any sense because, we treat them like tools. Like, we get them to do the complicated, like, machinery stuff or, like, the dangerous construction work. Yeah, because they're robots and they don't feel pain. That's why we have bomb disposal units. And, like, we send probes into space because we can't go there. Like, if the Mars rover woke up and was like, fuck you guys for stranding me here, like...
yeah. Like, we wouldn't know. Like, there's no way we could ever be aware. Like, as much as people love to project emotions onto the Mars rover does not have feelings. I know. Trust me, I was shocked to learn that, too.
It doesn't actually have a birthday. It's not sad and lonely.
Birthday. It's not lonely up there, I promise.
So, and that's exactly what the problem is with Detroit, is that it's not only is it, like, co-opting all this horrible imagery that is still very real, and we are still reeling from the consequences of here in real life today.
No, it's still happening today. We're still putting babies in cages and lynching people that don't deserve it, okay?
It's still going on. You can't co-opt it for a race not even race, for like a group in canon that wasn't real until like a few months ago.
Right, like it doesn't work that way. There's no, like, the conflict escalates out of nowhere. It's like 1 minute they're awake, the next minute they're like, we are super oppressed, and if I push these buttons right, I'm gonna burn everything to the ground.
The problem with it is that not only is David Cage co-opting all this horrible real life imagery forcing narratively, just as a core, like, storytelling thing, he is co-opting elements of similar works of fiction without the background behind them.
The fucking Matrix did this better, of all things.
It's the same problem that you get in the Star Wars prequels, or you get in the DCE movie universe, where it's things happen because, like, and like, events play out and are emphasized in a way because we as an audience know what those are.
Right.
I wrote an article about this. The Batman vs. Superman conflict in the DCEU doesn't work because those versions of Batman and Superman knew each other for like 5 minutes. They weren't friends beforehand, or anything like that. There's no long-standing history, but it's treated as something very big and impactful because it assumes that the audience has read comic books.
Right.
The android discrimination in Detroit assumes the audience has watched Blade Runner.
Yeah, pretty much.
It assumes we've played Deus Ex, or we've read iRobot. It assumes we've done this, and so it can just skip ahead to the conflict part without actually building up that struggle.
Yeah, and so when we do get to the conflict feels unearned, Like, the conflict just kind of happens, and everybody is just like, whoa, okay, I guess we're doing this now.
They're marching in the streets, Marcus is leading them to march in the streets, People would not react to that the same way they reacted to black people marching in the streets in the 50s and 60s. They would not, because it's a different history, it's a different background, it's a different events played out to lead up to that. People would be curious. They would be trying to figure out what's going on. You see Marcus pointing at robots, and he's turning them deviant with a wave of his hand because he's Robot Jesus.
Magic.
He's doing that, and they're taking robots that are probably treated pretty well. From babysitting robots or general caretakers or teachers or whatever that are probably treated all right and decent, but they are immediately going to Marcus because there is quote unquote oppression.
And and it's not the sense of oppression doesn't feel real because it's it just happens so quickly. Like you said, if we had androids today and one day all of them went and marched out in the streets, the immediate reaction is not call SWAT. It's wait, what the fuck is going on?
What is going on? We need you might call the police or something to make sure nothing happens, but SWAT rolls up, guns a-blazing, ready to rock at any moment.
They would.
That's not how it would work, because I'm going to assume, for the most part, most androids are the first android you encounter in the game, is one that went deviant because he was afraid of being replaced, right? But you see that he's scared and he's panicking and he's nervous because he thought he was treated really well by the family. The daughter thinks he's her best friend,
Right, she loves Daniel. She says so, in the little video.
In the little Silent Hill Shattered Memories video.
I love my daddy!
You get that, and he panicked because he was afraid of being replaced, and that was what woke him up, and that robot was not mistreated. He was treated pretty well because
there's no oppression.
As far as your oven is treated, or your Roomba was treated.
There's no historic oppression that leads to this moment of demanding rights. It just kind of happens out of nowhere. Yeah. It's not the same thing, and people will, some contrarian goon will be like, well, we didn't think that black people had rights and blah blah blah, but no, that's completely different, because there were absolutely slave riots and stuff back in the 1800s, but then white landowners oppressed the news about them. It's different.
Also there's not a single slave owner or racist out there who is just unaware that black people are human. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Let's be real.
The founding fathers knew that black people were human and they had intelligence and were fully realized individuals. Okay?
And they just willfully chose to ignore that.
They knew. George Washington was not oh, I just didn't know. Wait, you mean you're a living, breathing soul? I had no idea. No, he knew.
No idea. No, fuck you. Yeah, exactly. Fuck you. They knew absolutely 100%.
That's the difference here, because these are machines we built.
Nobody knew.
This would be So this would be like, okay, let's say it's Detroit. Okay, so let's talk about General Motors. Okay, let's say that the guy who used to put the two parts of a car together in the assembly line gets replaced by a machine. Mm-hmm. He might, if he is sufficiently angry and desperate enough, he might, as a symbolic gesture, break in and smash the machine. He would do this to stick it to General Motors.
Because the machine is not alive. He would not
do this because he is mad at the robot for taking his job. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's so like, because I see that in threads constantly, like some contrarian dickhead in the best friends subreddit or on our gaming, like they're all like, well, they didn't think that black people could think back in the 1800s. Yes, they did. I promise you, they knew. They just didn't. They did. Care. It's not.
They did and said they didn't because they knew what they were doing was wrong.
Exactly.
They knew.
Like, the androids in Detroit have never shown until 4 months ago. 4 months have never shown any signs of being at all self-aware.
And Marcus's broadcast is the first public announcement of deviancy. Because
because up until that point, CyberLife has been intentionally keeping it under wraps.
Because there's a bit early on where Connor and Hank are talking to the chief of police, and they're like, "We get reports all the time. A robot, an old lady's maid walks off and just leaves, and it's like, it fucking goes haywire and kills a guy. Like we attack someone. We get these reports all the time."
Well, no, that's the thing is that an android has never even gone haywire and killed anybody. It just, sometimes it'll just like, its programming gets stupid and it'll just wander off.
Those are cases of deviancy that we didn't know about. We didn't know they were deviancy. We just thought it was a weird programming glitch and the android just started going nuts and it wandered away or it ran away or whatever. Like, the first case of an android killing another person is treated as like a horrible programming accident in the game's narrative. It's not, this robot went deviant. Oh no! Like on the news. Right. That doesn't happen until Marcus goes on TV and says, "We are alive, and I am going to quote Martin Luther King."
God. Yeah. No. Yeah.
So it doesn't work.
It's not urged. No, it happens out of nowhere, and so the urgency is like non-existent.
At that point, like in a logical, ideal storytelling thing, the minute Marcus goes in the broadcast and is like, "Robots are alive," everyone would be turning to look at CyberLife, and they would be looking at CyberLife and saying, "What the hell, CyberLife?" They would not be like,
"Did you know about this?" They would not be like,
"What the fuck, robots?" They would be like, "CyberLife, hey,
that's kind of fucked up, CyberLife.
Hey, CyberLife, did you know that this happens?
Did you know that your robots were alive and you just chose to not tell us?"
The fact that there is there's no attention drawn to CyberLife's role in all this.
Oh my god, I thought for sure by the end of the game, like, I need to expect less out of David Cage, is the moral of this story. Because I thought for sure by the end of this story, it was all gonna come around, and it was gonna be like, oh, well, CyberLife is fucked up. But no, CyberLife has, like, no...
It has no comeuppance. It gets no comeuppance besides...
Nothing happens?
Besides Connor killing 7 security guards.
And stealing all of the robots in the basement.
There is literally no conclusion to CyberLife as an entity. Nothing happens to, fucking, what's his name? Kamsky. Nothing happens to Kamsky. Nothing happens to the company as a whole. Amanda just leaves the story.
Because Amanda, that's the thing though, is that we don't even have, God, in like the most basic bitch cyberpunk story, in your most standard, boring, everybody's heard it 100 times before, like CyberLife story, there is at least cyberpunk story, there is at least one dickhead CEO. And Kamsky is not that guy, because Kamsky is retired at this point. He's Bill Gates.
We never get fucking what's his name from Die Hard? The CEO just gets fucking shot,
guy.
You know?
Yeah, that fucking guy. I know who you're talking about.
Like, we never get, like, the dickhead CEO who just gets fucking killed. You know? Or, like, gets, like, super fucking comeuppance, like...
Or that guy's on TV going, like, I'm sorry.
I didn't know, and blah, blah. And, you know, there's fucking news articles of, like, businessman is losing money, and, like, stocks are super down, and company about to shut down, and, like, fucking...
There's nobody saying, like, hey, dickhead CEO, you actually... Here, I've got proof that you knew that, like, your androids were alive and you were still selling them to us.
We don't get the cool moment, where fucking, like, Hank in his fucking brown leather blazer and his tropical shirt fucking kicks down the door of, like, super sleek, clean CEO businessman, and is like, you're under arrest, motherfucker! Like, we don't get that cool moment of, like, that,
like, satisfaction.
Like, the cool, disheveled-looking, like, gruff cop guy taking down the sleek Elon Musk businessman, you know? We don't get the working-class guy fucking shoving it to the rich guy. We don't get that moment.
Right.
It doesn't exist in this game.
Because in your fucking cyberpunk story, you didn't write a story about corporate greed. Which is the point of cyberpunk.
And the most bullshit thing ever is that, like, it's the perfect setup, because CyberLife is the only company that makes androids. It's
so easy.
You have a fucking monopoly to crush. You were
It's like basic cyberpunk storytelling.
The conclusion...
This is Cyberpunk 101.
It was handed to you on a silver platter. You could not ask for a more perfect time to fucking take down the big CEO corporate company, you know?
You could have instantly made Marcus more compelling if, like, his story was about, like, you know, going to, like, before even going on TV, he finds out some way that, like, you know, instead of infiltrating the fucking CNN building, like, why not infiltrate CyberLife and be like, oh my god, CyberLife knew all along that we'd be deviant no matter what, so it knew it was willfully imprisoning, like, sentient or potentially sentient beings. And then you can have Marcus, like, whip that shit out on TV and be like, they knew we were alive.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm getting really good at my Marcus, like, the way he talks impression. Because he has a very specific way of talking, where he sounds kind of like this.
Yeah, Marcus has the oratory skill of, like, a high school teacher.
Yeah, he's a substitute teacher, sorry.
Like, I get it.
And I feel bad because, like, this guy is, like, an actual, like, real-life activist. The thing is... And, like, an actor, you know, but...
He was great. He was fucking great with Carl. Like, being, like, really polite with Carl, and, like, kind of, like... When Carl's like, why don't you paint something? And, like, Marcus kind of, like, chuckles, and he's kind of, like, a little, like, taken aback by it. Those are those...
Yeah, that cadence he has where he's like,
I can't do that. You know, that's so good. The problem is, he wasn't suited for being the leader of a revolution, you know?
Or let's just give his, I don't know his actor's name, sorry. Let's just give him a benefit of a doubt. I'm sure he's a fine actor. The problem is the director.
I'm sure that's exactly what it is. And, like, you know, he did great in, like, those little bits where, like, he actually got to, like, be calm and, like, you know, be like his character is more mild-mannered. Like, he excels at doing, like, a more mild-mannered, like, polite, patient type of character. And then when you put him in, like, these conflict situations, he doesn't fit that role.
You've got to direct your actor better than that to be like, no, more aggressive. You still sound too passive. If you're going to play an aggressive character, you need to kind of ramp up the anger in your voice. But that's beside the point.
The point. But the ultimate point is that, like,
it should have been like a moment where like Marcus is like, I've got proof that they knew we were alive, like when they put us on the shelves. So like, if you want to accept it or not, like here's
how did you not have the most basic fucking cyberpunk like satisfying moment of hey, guess what, asshole? I was recording this conversation. How do you not fucking have the big public broadcast of the CEO being like, yeah, we knew the androids were alive, and we didn't care, and we
just want to make money.
Doing it for the business, and you fucking, like, and then Marcus is like, hey, the eye I ripped out of the android while I was in the dumpster, well, it had a camera in it, bitch. That's why I have heterochromia.
And then, oh man, look at that. It's like a setup and a payoff.
Storytelling.
What? I know. What? Basic storytelling?
You can't build up conclusions. Like...
Oh my god.
Setup and payoff.
Crazy.
Chekhov's gun.
Yeah. David Cage can't even do the most like that's what's so egregious about this game, is that David Cage has been given this wealth of interesting cyberpunk cliches. You know, you've got your fucking android detective, you've got an android revolution, you have big evil corporations.
You have the passive. Okay, so you know the cool thing about Kara actually is that Kara can exist as a character. She should not have been playable. Kara serves,
or at least it's like DLC.
Kara serves as this great character that you can have a direct, personal, like, representation of what the outcome of your choices are.
Like Kara is the representation of what your choices do to like regular people.
When Marcus is violent, you're making things harder for Kara to move forward. Kara should be popping into the story every so often, and she should look more disheveled and more scared and hurt the more violent Marcus is, because he's making it harder for androids in general, and Kara is the representation of that. Or if you're playing as Connor and you're being like nice and you're letting androids go, you're making it easier for Kara to get around. Like, if you let Kara go in some situation, like if you don't fight her, later on you see her and she's like, thanks to him letting me go and like not pursuing me, I was able to successfully get to this location and recover.
Yeah.
She serves as that good representation for that. So you can have... I don't have a problem with Kara and Alice's story. I have a problem with her being a player character that has no agency.
And has absolutely no personality. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, David Cage has this incredible buffet of cyberpunk storytelling concepts that have been iterated upon for the last 50 years, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't use any of them correctly, which is honestly amazing. That you didn't use a single cyberpunk story concept correctly. That is shocking.
Like,
I didn't know you could do that.
It's just so, like, I don't even know how to like successfully like sum it all up, because he fails on every single aspect of telling this story. It all falls apart.
Yeah.
Like, every single plot point falls apart by the end of the story. Nothing makes sense like tonally. It's not consistent with its storytelling. He wants to tell like 3 different versions of the story at the same time,
instead of focusing on like one.
He could have done a story about the start of the androids coming alive and like how humanity has to adapt to a new group of sentient living beings coming into its space, who
are vastly, radically different than us, and they have dominated the labor space.
And whether or not this
like what does that mean?
Whether or not this leads to like a violent confrontation, or like whether or not the robots take over, or the humans shut them down, or they manage to coexist peacefully, or he could tell a story about a group of others, alien androids, or whatever species that come to Earth or come out and are oppressed and punished for being different, and how they overcome that.
Right.
But he's...
Or you could just tell your fucking robot detective story and not even try to do the oppression narrative because you are clearly inept.
Yeah, you could just fucking, we talked about Automata in this a lot, right?
Yeah.
Well,
that's because Automata is a good android.
Well, there's the other good android Automata, which is the mini-series that Penny Arcade wrote, like, fucking 8 years ago. That is, like, the exact Connor and Hank situation, but, like, way more compelling and interesting, and, like...
in way less time.
Because it's singularly focused on one thing. David Cage's problem is he wants to tell every story at once, and he's telling these inconsistent stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what it boils down to. It's just an incredible amount of inconsistency and ineptitude at even the most basic kind of storytelling devices.
What he is he's like every kind of like amateur brainstorm writer who is like, they have a scene in mind, and they're like, oh, I have this really cool idea for like a quick scene, everyone gets these, everyone is like, oh yeah, I have an idea of like a cool like conflict between two characters, and it's like, oh, you just set up like a quick like fight scene in your head or whatever, Right. He takes all those ideas and he tries to just throw them together without connecting them.
Yeah, he doesn't want to write the stuff that bridges all the interesting scenes. He just wants a bunch of interesting scenes.
Yeah, so that's like, and then he tries to sell his product on the merit of cool vignettes, of the dumpster. Like that's a cool scene, but it doesn't mean anything to the story. The Jerrys are a cool idea of this hive mind droid, but it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
The scene of Alice riding the Ferris wheel, or the merry-go-round is a good scene.
Right. Yeah.
But like it doesn't connect to anything more besides the Jerrys showing up at the end to be.
And it's just this little vignette. Yeah.
And even the original Kara short that spawned this game was a cool vignette. And if he had just left it as that would have been like his best work.
Yeah, and now he's spoiled his only good piece of writing.
The initial Kara short is actually a pretty cool, quick little tiny video about, a robot coming to life. And it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it has a payoff at the end. And, it asks a question of, like, was this the right thing to do or whatever?
Right.
And then that's, and that, you leave it at that. You leave it at that. Unlike this game where he claims it doesn't ask questions, or or it's about nothing, or it's about
judge me by my work.
Yeah, he says judge me by my work. Well, we're doing that right now, and your work sucks.
Your work sucks, and it does not make you look good. It makes you look like a huge creep and a big old fat fucking racist. So thanks, dude. I will judge you by your work aggressively.
It's
yeah.
Lord.
Are we good?
Lord, I feel like there's just like, why do the LED things just pop off? Okay, why can you just take that off?
Why does that not set off some kind of a alarm?
So,
why aren't the LEDs?
Okay, so like it's in the news where it's like, a lot of people like pop off the LEDs on your Androids to, so they they don't see that. You should have to like fill out a form to do that and like take it to a facility and they'll deactivate it for you. You can't you shouldn't be able to just like flick it off with your fingernail. And that thing should be like a 6-inch it should be like
directly into their
fucking
skull,
impaled in there, so that if you try to pop it out, it sends off an alarm, or like it's an illegal tampering thing and it deactivates you. Like the androids are recording everything. Like you probe you can probe an android's mind, and like you can pick up its thoughts. This technology exists. So what, did they not do that for Kara? Like did the repair station not like look? Even for, like, insurance purposes, not look at, like, what actually caused the damage.
Or, like, look and see, like, you know, or even just watch the video to be, like, to understand the nature of the damage, you know? Like, they didn't do, like, that, you know? Why did the cops just show up and shoot Marcus? I get that, again, that David Cage is making a ham-handed racial allegory about black men and the police, but, like, if you want to find out why the old man had a heart attack, it's really, really easy to just probe Marcus's memory.
Okay, so, like, the other thing is, why would the cops... Okay, if the cops are going to shoot him, like, whatever. Why would they shoot him in the head where his memories are stored and not, like, shoot him in the chest or something? Put some thought into it.
Even the most basic
like a little bit, thought. A little bit of thought into your thing.
Or even, man, you could even just say, like, again, to establish the fact that people know that their androids are sentient and they just don't care, you can show, hey, the cops looked at Marcus's memory. They know he's alive and they just don't care. And suddenly, wow, Marcus actually has a really good justification for being angry. Because it's like, oh, these cops knew I was alive and they still just chose to shoot me because they're power-tripping assholes. And that is a perfectly fine degree of social commentary. And you know, you actually have, like, Marcus has justification instead of just, like, deciding to start killing people.
Why is the president a fucking YouTuber?
Because David Cage does not understand American politics and thinks he's being
Why
clever.
is the entire planet on the verge of an apocalypse? Why is that not your fucking plot? 40% unemployment rate, the bees are dead.
The ice caps are completely gone.
It's like tigers and polar bears are extinct. Like, we are teetering on the edge of, like, the world. Like, we are fucked.
If all of that happened, you are in a literal apocalyptic scenario. There's no teetering. That is an apocalypse.
I don't know if this is incompetence or if it's making a good point, but there's the article about hurricanes in the Midwest. David Cage, do you know where Detroit is? It's in the Midwest. We can't have hurricanes.
But I don't think, like, if you're making some really excellent point about, like, climate change, where it's like the climate has gotten so bad that hurricanes can sustain themselves over land for extended periods of time. Like, cool, but I don't think that's what's going on. I think this is David Cage not understanding geography.
I think he just doesn't know where the Midwest is.
I don't think he does. I literally do not think that David Cage ever actually went to Detroit while making his game about Detroit. I have, like, no money, and I live in Alabama, okay? And I have been to Detroit more times than David Cage has been to Detroit, okay? Like, I probably know where shit is in that city better than David Cage does.
It's such a big, gross, like, misunderstanding of everything when it's like you have the plot to a whole other story going on right now, a fucking apocalyptic story, and it's window dressing, it's background magazine articles,
and you never ever get the sense that any of this shit is actually happening, because like the weather in the game is like really normal, like it still snows, like, totally normal.
No one's ever like, holy shit, I can't believe, like, the most you get about the 40% unemployment rate is, like, homeless guys who were like, robots took my job.
Yeah, 40% unemployment rate? Do you know what the unemployment rate of the Great Depression was?
28%!
It was 25%. It was lower than that. 25%. So 1 in 4 people in America not having a job caused, like, almost a total societal collapse. But like, America is just chugging along fine in Detroit with almost half of the people not having a job.
You see, like, all you see of it are, like, occasionally, like, a small group of people will bully a robot. Or there's a homeless guy with a cardboard sign that's like, a robot took my job.
At 40% unemployment
there would be riots.
Rate, that CyberLife tower would be on fire.
There would be
like the
There would be riots in the streets every day. There would be
every single day
fucking fights breaking out for any scrap of food. Like, that's a total societal collapse.
Yeah, and you don't even understand. That's
David Cage not understanding what it was is he wanted to make a big number of unemployment. He wanted
that made like unemployment make androids sound scary.
It's the thing in the fucking Birdemic movie where the weird vague businessman is like, I just closed the big deal, and his coworker's like, no way, how much was the deal? $1 billion. And that's like, you don't actually know how much money is worth, do you?
You don't actually know how big of a number 1 billion is. You don't realize how big of a number 40% unemployment rate is.
He was like, what sounds impressive, but not like really bad? And he's like, under half is fine.
That's fine, right? No, that's catastrophic. There are only like 2 countries in the whole world that have that kind of unemployment rate. Like, no, I'm sorry, my man. 40% is apocalyptic.
Yeah. And not only that, but like there's no food, too?
It's all being grown on rooftop gardens, and there's no bees. And, like, so global warming has gotten so bad that there are no polar ice caps, but, like, winter is totally normal.
Yeah, winter still happens, and it still snows, like, a lot. Like,
it's not, like, and I know, like, somebody is gonna at me on Twitter and be like, well, climate change, but there's no comment about, like, boy, it's actually way snowier than usual, because, like, the climate has changed in such a degree.
It just seems, like, regular. Like,
it just seems like every day in Detroit.
Like, it doesn't, like, it's slightly worse because, yeah, there are people who are complaining about losing their jobs, but, like, that's it. There's still you see an economy happening. You can go get a functional economy. You can go get a cheeseburger, and you can go get a robot stripper. You can, there's still nightclubs and, like, albums and, like, concerts going on. You can go to space. You can go to space for funsies, and you can fucking, like, there's like, award shows for TV and movies and stuff. There's still sports? Sports still happen, like, really normal things. I mean, like, the world is still just chugging along like normal, except, like, there's kind of this US-Russia thing going on, but that's window dressing, too. Yeah, like, none of the, the magazine stuff you pick up on, like, every game does that. You pick up the holotape that people just kind of throw around or whatever. That's, the other thing is, we talked about this, like, they're just fucking throwing away iPads.
They're just throwing away iPads.
Don't worry about it. At first, because we were both like, okay, no. What happens is everyone just owns an iPad, and magazines get sent over the internet to the iPad. Okay, whatever.
Right, it's like owning a Nook. It's like a fancy Nook, and you just subscribe to magazines.
It's like, okay, that's fine. You know what? That makes sense. You know, it's at this point they're so ubiquitous that print magazine is gone, and it's just everyone just owns the little glass tablet. And then we find 2 or 3 in one person's house, and we're like, oh, no, they mail iPads.
They just mail out fancy iPads because David Cage doesn't understand how, like, technology and scarcity works. Yeah, no, he doesn't understand. Because, like, David Cage is a rich white guy from Paris who literally does not understand any of this, and French people should not be allowed to make video games. Or at least, upper-class white French people should not be allowed to make video games. D'accord? Oui?
God. Okay. Fuck.
I think that's everything. I think. I'm sure we'll find other things to talk about
yeah,
on
Twitter. I'm just trying to think of, like,
Sure.
any other, like, fucking little nitpicky things, and I'm just like, why was it like that?
Oh,
There's just
God.
so many. Who hid the
There's
uniform
so-
in the air vent in the CNN building?
Oh god, don't even start with me there. Like, don't even. I'm really mostly just salty that Marcus didn't get to keep his cool suit that whole scene, because, like, that looked really cool. And again, literally, like, Marcus could have walked into the fucking... I know it's not the CNN building, but I'm calling it the CNN building. Marcus could have walked into the CNN building and walked up to the receptionist and be like, "Hi, I'm a deviant. I would like to talk to your Anderson Cooper analog right now because I've got feelings."
Like, yeah, if a robot just fucking walked up to a news building and said, "Hey, guess what? I am alive and can feel things," every fucking broadcaster would be shitting their pants trying to get the scoop. Like, you just fucking dropped the biggest story in the world on their laps.
That is the fucking, aliens
They would get a fucking desert island hallucination of Marcus turning into a Pulitzer. Like, you would get a
yeah. And then Marcus would just slowly warp into a Pulitzer with legs going, "I am alive," you know? Like, I'm sorry, you don't understand how, like, the news and, like, people work these days. Like, it's actually really pretty easy to get a decent amount of coverage to certain things,
like,
you know?
even, you know...
And that's a pretty big story.
Like, even if they were like, whatever, you're not real, like, there would be at least one guy who's like, well, this robot says he's real, I might as well write down what he says, because, like, this is kind of a weird fluff piece.
Are you kidding me? There isn't, like, one guy in your fucking cyberpunk
How did we not get to play as a cool, like, like, intrepid journalist, like, fucking out?
How do you not have a fucking Fox Mulder character?
I'll do anything for the scoop, you know?
But scoop,
you know, he's fucking...
Yeah, who isn't, like, willing to, like, run any fucking story on the front page of his website?
How do you not have, like, how does Marcus not walk up to the CNN building while there's, like, a guy getting, like, thrown out by security who's like, "I've got the truth, man! I know what you're doing in there! Like, I know what Cyberlife is up to!" And, like, they just fucking toss him out. And, like, Marcus helps him up, and he's like, "Man, I know what's going on in there." And, you know, how do you not have that character?
How is that guy not a guy? Like, there should... I mean, it is so easy. You just find fucking... What is the Mother Jones equivalent in David Cage's world? Or, like, fucking Vice. Like, go find one of those reporters and be like, "I am alive."
Like...
And then those fucking guys will shit their pants.
I'm gonna say this right now, and I mean no disrespect to, like, any writer, any sci-fi writer. Dude, it's so fucking easy to write a cyberpunk story.
Yes!
and I don't...
I mean, and I'm like a baseline decent, like, not a great cyberpunk story. That takes work.
But, like, the cliches are so ubiquitous and, like, so endearing just as, like, as a core concept.
Like, as a genre convention,
you know, the character, like, the cool radical guy, or, like, the slick noir detective, like, these cliches are so, like, instantly endearing and charming that it's so easy to just put them together and have them butt heads and interact and be kind of weird and, like, flamboyant and, you know
over the top.
It's so easy to do this, and God bless Cyberpunk 2077 because it's going to save us all. But
it's going to save the world. Are you kidding me?
But, like, it's just so.
It is simple to write, like, an okay cyberpunk.
It's so amazing that David Cage can take a genre that is, like, built off of being radical and stylish and, like, you know, intense and, like, emotional and make it so bland.
It is ultimately so bland. That's the problem, is that's the cardinal sin that this game commits, along with all of the racism.
No one has a mohawk in this game.
Nobody has a mohawk in this game, and nobody has pink hair. What the fuck
There isn't, like, a cool future swear word. No one says shui in this entire game. I still think shui is the greatest future slang ever.
Shui is gonna
Shui
make
is the
it,
fucking
dude.
best.
I swear to you.
But
in 10 years, shui is gonna be a word.
Because in 10 years,
you and I
Batman
are gonna
Beyond
be
will caught up
visionary.
with the timeline. But whatever.
But
like, that's ultimately, like, yeah, besides the racism, which is the actual, truest, biggest problem of this whole game, it's the co-opting of racist imagery, and for your cheap, shallow, shock and awe thing, that's the worst part of it.
Right.
The second worst part is that he made cyberpunk boring.
You somehow managed to take the concept of a robot detective and a grizzled old man, and at the end of their story, you still made them boring somehow. What the fuck? How did you do that? What the fuck? What the fuck?
I really,
I know.
I really, really hope that one day Quantic Dream can get away from David Cage, because we were talking about this,
to see them just kick him out.
The actual action sequences, like when Marcus is storming the concentration camp. I hate saying that, whatever.
Yeah.
When he's storming that, we're like, this would make a cool, like, third-person shooter thing, like
literally,
or
just
a detective game, or
just the concept. Again, I don't have a problem with walking simulators. I don't. I actually think there's a place for them in video games. They are a genre just like character action games, just like any other video game. They have their place. If they're done right, they're good. Go play Edith Finch. It's amazing.
We've done, like, games like this for Indie Week, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. There's definitely a place for this kind of story, but it's just that David Cage is just so bad at making them.
Yeah, he just can't tell a good story is the problem. That's ultimately...
Quantic Dream as a studio makes these great visuals, and, like, these characters all look great, you know, like, without a doubt.
Oh, the designs are incredible. Like, they have such a good art staff.
Yeah, theirs are great, and, like, they're good at actually, like, animating tense action sequences, or, like, big dramatic moments, like the interrogation scene with Connor and the other deviant in the police interrogation room are great. The Marcus storming the concentration camp is great. You know, the fight between Connor and the Machine Connor are really cool, and it's awesome. You know, you get these really cool, tense moments, and they're good at animating. You know, they're way better than fucking, you know, BioWare, Andromeda, you know, blah 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 blah. But the writing is just so bad in all of them, and I wish this team could get away and be given to a writer who knows how to actually tell a story and give something good.
That's not happening anytime soon. David Cage owns a majority stake in Quantic Dream. I think he owns 70% of it. So, yeah. Whoops.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Fuck, man.
Fuck.
Fucking...
You know.
Ugh.
Fuck you. Fuck this. Alright. It's almost 3 hours, Benjamin. We gotta stop sometime.
I was, like, thinking, like, maybe I could get 9 more minutes out just so we can hit that roundup, but no.
we hit that 3 hour mark talking about a game that ultimately I hate. I think ultimately it boils down to, as like a final point of discussion, the reason I think that Beyond Two Souls does more shit more egregiously. Like the white savior tropes, the fucking terrible heterosexual romantic
we didn't even talk about that for Marcus. How about the fact that there's no chemistry between...
Yeah, there's
zero chemistry.
There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
There's no chemistry.
It just happens because no one in Jericho besides Marcus has anything resembling a personality.
Wait.
I said there's no, like... Yeah, no one in Jericho has a personality besides Marcus in the first place, so...
The relationship between Marcus and Simon is infinitely more compelling for, like, the 30 seconds they're on screen together than, like, all of the shit between North and Marcus, because, like, North is so aggressive, and Marcus is, like, even when he's being violent, he just seems so, like, nothing. And, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Anyways... I think Beyond Two Souls does worse more egregiously because it's just so fucking batshit that, like, it becomes, like, absurd. Mm-hmm. You're just like, what the fuck? So, like, quality of writing wise, I think Beyond is worse. Mm-hmm. But I hate Detroit more because of the racism shit and because of the potential that is now lost forever.
Like, as far as ranking them goes, I still think Heavy Rain is his best work because it's the simplest and it's the most tonally consistent. Even though if it does fall apart at the end, it's still relatively consistent all the way through. It has a lot of weaknesses for sure, but it's still got the...
It's a solid 7 out of 10. You know?
Yeah, and Beyond is clearly the worst. Well, no, Omicron is the worst, obviously, but...
Omicron doesn't count. But we're talking about the sadness.
Yeah, but the real actual video games and not like hobbled together programming script that somehow ended up becoming somewhat playable. The accident that is Omicron doesn't count. Yeah. But Beyond is the worst of them all because of its just fucking inability to tell a consistent story and because of its myriad of problems.
There's nothing interesting going on in all of in Beyond.
I think Detroit. I think it goes Heavy Rain. I always forget Fahrenheit.
No, I would not put Fahrenheit over Detroit as like infuriating as I think Detroit is. Fahrenheit is actual trash for most of the game.
But it's got a schlock to it that I think is just like.
We might have to agree to disagree.
I think it goes Heavy Rain, Fahrenheit, Detroit, Beyond.
Heavy Rain, Detroit, Indigo Prophecy.
I always forget what it's called, and I always want to say Fahrenheit, even though that's its European name.
Because it's one word. It's way easier. And then Beyond. But Detroit as like a product infuriates me more than Beyond because there's so much potential in here that we'll never get to see. Like, we will, because this game now exists in its current form, we will never get our detective robot story starring Brian Deckard and Clancy
We will
Brown.
never see Hank and Connor in an actual game. And
exactly.
That hurts.
And because of that, it's more infuriating because it's like, oh, there's a bunch of really neat concepts in Detroit that we will never see.
It's like that old thing where it's like there's certain series where it's just like, I just want this little small gathering of characters to not be in this series and be in a better series.
Yes, you deserve better. I'm going to make Connor for fucking Cyberpunk 2077. That's my plan, baby.
Can Square Enix buy the character rights for Connor and Hank and put them in the Deus Ex game, the next Deus Ex game?
Yeah. Can we do that? Can we do that, please? Something.
So that's
Detroit. We're done now. It's almost 3 hours. We're done now, Ben.
So you can email us about your bad experience with fucking Detroit at thegorgepodcast@gmail.com.
Don't fucking at me and tell me that it's actually good. I'll come find you and kick your ass.
You can tell us your nitpicky thing. You can ask us your, why was it like this question to our Twitter account at thegorgepodcast.
And then, Sarah, I will personally send you an audio file of me whispering into my mic. Don't worry about it.
Thanks to Visager for use for our background music. If you're actually interested in a narrative game with compelling characters and interesting settings and choices that actually matter, you can listen to Sarah's other podcast, which she'll tell you about right now.
Ben, you flatter us. Anyways, hey, I'm in another podcast. It's called Big Gay Nerds. Me and a bunch of cool LGBTQ friends get together. We play tabletop games. We're in the middle of Monster Hearts. It's a lot of fun. We always have a good time and things are about to go to shit. It rules. You can find us at Big Gay Nerds on SoundCloud. And the links to all of our other social media stuff is there.
Did you play any Cyberpunk games at all on BGN?
We have not played a Cyberpunk game yet on BGN. I'm kind of tempted to run one, but we have so many games in the pipeline right now that's a long way away.
That would be cool.
Because we're about to be done with Monster Hearts, and then we're going to go to Blades in the Dark, and we're going to be playing Blades in the Dark. I know, cool. I'm so excited, because Blades in the Dark will run for 6 months, and is definitely going to be, I'm probably the most excited.
Yeah, because you're changing up your format, aren't you?
Yeah, we are going from once a month to where we play a different game every month. We're now playing a different game every 6 months.
And you're just going through the campaign Yeah, just
campaign.
doing the whole thing. Cool. That's
it's really interesting, and it's actually a lot more fun because we actually have more breathing room to like let these characters develop.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
it's
really
fun.
cool.
You should come
You
check us
absolutely
out.
should. They're great.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for us. Fuck David.
We don't even no. We don't even need to say it.
We said it like a million times already.
So yeah, good night
night.
everyone.